early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late. Right, exactly. Hey, surprise. Yeah.
Wow.
Sure. Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah.
We're going to call the meeting to order in 15 seconds. Wow.
That's awesome.
Okay, wow.
Isn't that so rewarding?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This meeting of your Pontiac City Council is hereby called to order at 6:02 p.m. according to Verizon Wireless. We turn now to the Honorable William Parker Jr., Councilman for District 5, to introduce this evening's invocation.
Thank you, Brother President. I introduce to some and share with others Pastor Emeritus Kathy Desero, who's going to give us our invocation this evening.
Our precious Father, we thank you for this beautiful weather. We thank you for the warmth and the sunshine. We even thank you for the rain, Lord, but we're really tired of it. Father, we ask that you bless each person who has taken their time to come to meeting tonight. May wise decisions be made. May your leading guide this. And Father, we just ask that all the needs that are represented here tonight would be met through prayer and through you. For we ask it in the name of our Father and his Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you could please remain standing for a moment of silence. We're going to reflect upon... Were you trying to get my attention? Or just clearing your throat? Okay. Sorry. We remember those that we've lost as a community in recent weeks. We have these names all displayed on the main floor of Pontiac City Hall as well. In alphabetical order, remembering Pontiac neighbors who we've lost: Retha Alilis Hauk, age 100. Clarence Arnold, age 97. Dex Bailey, just 8 months old. Doug Baumgrass, Shane Brady, Victor Briggs, Samuel Burrell Jr., Avery Burton, Charles Cato, Caleb Chappell, John Cheney Jr., John Chasteen, J. Davis Clark, Willie Cooper, Willa Craig, Eugene Creamer, Kelsey Daniels Jr., Robert Deaver, Brian Dombrowski, Don Trey Edwards, Debbie Eldridge Gwynn, Kendra Frankel, Rosendo Garcia, James Glenn, Margie Gooding Pivot, Vernon Gordon Jr., Mary Graham, Anita Hamlin, Harold Harris, Lewis Harris Jr., Ingrid Haynes, Wanda Holmes, Judith Huntenlocker, Gladys Kirksey, William Nisley, Ivory Lockett, just 2 months old, Martina Lewis, Janet Mahone, Roland McKenzie, Rick Miles, Gregory Miller, Theodore Mendoza, Walter Morris, John Mueller-Trathan, Noel Nieves Jr., Richard Norfolk, Julio Ortiz, Daryl Pace, Damasio Padilla, Eileen Page, Marilyn Parrish Sismadia. Jason J. Porter, just 16. Albert Rayborn. LeConte Robertson Carter. Raul Rodriguez. Johnny Rodriguez Gonzalez. Otis Samuel Sr. Joe Simmons. Christopher Smith. Jacob Smith. James D. Smith. Amy Stanley Lee. John Strong. Juan Suleika. Charles Turner. Mary Webb, just 15. Paula Turner Wilson. Wayne Wilson. Maggie Underwood Lysack. Kenneth Wagner. Mandy Walker. Gail Ward. And Lori Williams. Please join us as a community as we have a moment of silence in their honor. Thank you very much. You may be seated. Roll call, Clerk Doyle.
Carrington. Goodman.
Here.
James.
Here.
McGinnis.
Present.
Nicholson.
Here.
Parker.
Here.
Rutherford. Mr. President, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Quorum being established, could I please have a motion to excuse Council Pro Tem Carrington?
Support.
It's been moved by Councilman Rutherford, seconded by Councilman Parker, that we excuse Council President Pro Tem William A. Carrington for personal reasons. Hearing no discussion, roll call on adoption of that motion. Clerk Doyle.
Goodman.
Yes.
James.
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Nicholson.
Yes.
Parker.
Yes.
Rutherford.
Yes.
6 yeas, no nays.
That motion carries. We've got a little bit of reverberation on the microphone, so if we want to, when we're not speaking, just have them off. Hopefully that'll help. All right. Is there a motion to approve this evening's agenda?
So moved.
It's been moved by Councilman Rutherford, seconded by Councilman Parker. I'm handing these down.
Yes.
So the motion before us is adoption of the agenda. Is there a motion to amend the agenda to add a resolution to go into closed session to discuss a letter from the city attorney regarding the election petition filed with the Michigan Employment Relations Commission as permitted by MCL 15.268 subsection C and MCL 15.268 subsection H? That will come after discussions. So it's been moved by Councilman Rutherford, seconded by Councilman Goodman. Hearing no discussion on that motion to amend, roll call and adoption of that amendment to the agenda. Clerk Doyle.
James.
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Nicholson.
Yes.
Parker.
Yes.
Rutherford.
Yes.
Goodman.
Yes.
6 yeas, no nays.
All right, that motion carries. The amendment is approved, and again, that'll come after, closed session will come after discussions. All right, Councilman Goodman, did you have a motion? Did you want to add it as a discussion item?
Yeah, motion to add a announcement for the Education Justice meeting as a discussion.
Support.
So moved by Goodman, supported by Nicholson, to add a discussion item. We can make it number 17, discussion for Education Justice meeting. Education Justice meeting. So is there any discussion on that motion to amend the agenda to add that discussion? Hearing no further discussion, roll call on that amendment. Clerk Doyle.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Nicholson.
Yes.
Parker.
Yes.
Rutherford.
Yes.
Goodman.
Yes.
James.
Yes.
6 yeas, no nays.
All right, so that amendment carries. So we're at the main motion of approval of the agenda as amended. 2 amendments have been made so far. Is there any further changes that the council wishes to see or clarifications or concerns? Hearing no further discussion, roll call and adoption of the agenda as amended. Clerk Doyle.
Goodman.
Yes.
James.
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Nicholson.
Yes.
Parker.
Yes.
Rutherford.
Yes.
6 yeas, no nays.
All right, that motion carries. The agenda, the amended agenda is approved. Is there a motion to approve this evening's consent agenda?
Support.
It's been moved by Councilman Rutherford, seconded by Councilman Nicholson. 4 sets of meeting minutes are in that consent agenda. It's the March 9th Finance and Personnel Subcommittee minutes, the March 27th Law and the Court Subcommittee minutes, the April 3rd Economic Development, Housing and Planning Subcommittee minutes, and the April 4th regular City Council meeting minutes. Roll call and adoption of the consent agenda. Clerk Doyle.
Nicholson,
Yes.
Parker,
Yes.
Rutherford,
Yes.
Goodman,
Yes.
James,
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
6 yeas, no nays.
That motion carries. The consent agenda is approved. We are now at subcommittee reports, where we provide a monthly verbal update on what the subcommittees of the City Council have been working on to advance the business of the City of Pontiac and its citizens. We turn now to the Communications, Engagement, and Operations Subcommittee, and their chair, Councilman Goodman.
Yes, absolutely. So the updates I have from the Communications Department, as you can see in this council chamber, is a little bit brighter in here because there has been a new projector installed. If you remember correctly, a couple weeks ago, the last projector did kind of give out on us. But with this new one, it obviously being projected solely onto the back wall, which it will have a screen at some point, but it looks much better for the viewing audience here. As well as for the people back home, because it does feed directly into the feed, opposed to having to be caught on camera by our cameras to see it. The cable department is working on a couple different issues in terms of how to make the viewing experience better at home. Like currently, our audio is picked up in a rather old-fashioned that I will not go into explain, but we are working to make it a bit more high-tech, so where that also gets fed directly into the live stream feed. Really a lot of things have been focused on refining the process and how things look for people with these meetings, both here and at home, as well as just making sure that things are up to date. Another thing that's happening is the cable team will be out in the field capturing videos throughout the city for Earth Day this week for our better attempts to communicate to the residents of the city things that are happening in the city, what's happening, what's going on, because I think it's really important. In the city itself, I think it's very important for people to be aware of that. The IT department is working with the mayor's administration to identify a cost-effective kiosk for citizens to be able to interact with the different departments, file information, pay bills. So there are a lot of things that are happening to essentially modernize City Hall and bring things up to date. I think that covers a good portion of a lot of it.
All right. For Economic Development, Housing, and Planning, I'm the subcommittee chair for that. At our meeting on April 3rd, we reviewed updates from the Building and Safety Department in terms of noteworthy projects, but also demolition updates. The batch 17 demolitions have all been concluded, save for one particular site, which has a prospect now for redevelopment, which is hopeful. We heard from the Economic Development updates as it relates to the rollout status for the home repair program that the city is pursuing. As a status update, those applications are not yet available. Is that still the true statement? It was true last night, Mayor Grimal. Is it still true that the applications for the home repair program are still forthcoming?
That's right. I don't think we've set a application window date quite yet. As soon as we have one, we will be announcing it through lots of avenues.
Very good. I just didn't want to give a stale report from that subcommittee from a week ago in case something changed. We reviewed code enforcement updates shared, as well as expanding the capacity for code enforcement. And this city council, since our last subcommittee updates, has approved overtime pay so that way code enforcement can continue even beyond just the standard hours. We want to have as much thorough coverage as we continue to see stronger code enforcement in our commercial corridors and throughout our neighborhood. And then we heard from the Pontiac Housing Commission about their 5-year plan that they are considering. And we're shortly after our subcommittee, we're going to be considering, and we look forward to reviewing that once they've made a determination there. Those minutes are viewable if anyone would like to see further. And with that, I'll turn the floor now to Facilities and Property Subcommittee Chair Rutherford.
Good evening. What we talked about in our subcommittee was the selling of Purdue. We also talked about permanent position place for DPW because we're looking for a permanent place to have it housed. We also talked about building code and ethics and seeing the update on how we are handling that. And last but certainly not least, we talked about making sure inspections are done timely. The best part of the meeting is that we are actually moving forward as a city with the possible selling of Purdue, which has been a blight on our community since we ended up owning it 2 years ago. And that is my report.
All right, Finance and Personnel, the Subcommittee Chair, Councilman Nicholson.
We met on March 9th. All members were there. We did go through the previous month's financial reports up to year to date. The city is within all of our budgeted variances for each department. We talked a bit about the budget amendments that would be forthcoming and went through some of the finer details of those. Had a good news from the audit that our audit was submitted to the state, so that is past us at this point. And updates from the Human Resource Department of open positions that have just recently been filled. And we still are looking for individuals in multiple departments, so please spread the word. All of our positions are posted on pontiac.mi.org.
All right, very good. Law and the Court Subcommittee, Chairman Parker.
Thank you, Brother President. We of the Law and Courts met on March 27th. We started out discussing the 50th Court District and the need for the parking lot in the back to be restriped, and certainly need to take a look at checking under the fencing to keep out the unwanted thoroughfare traffic. We then moved to code enforcement, which used to be Blight Court, and as of the February-March time period, there was 2,555 code enforcement inspections, 560 rental inspections, 43 new tickets were litigated, and 79 was in district court. Overall, there's been some satisfaction. The court as well as code enforcement are pleased with where they are, understanding that as it exists right now, there are 2 openings that are available, which they are interviewing for. There's one that's on medical and don't know when they're going to return. We understand that the landlord eviction cases will be caught up by March 31st, although the person must be present to get a judgment. We talked about the HVAC system, which has been an ongoing issue, primarily due because some of the vendors who have been asked to submit a proposal for it have increased their pricing, and it adjusted the RFP, so that had to be redone. In addition, there's 4 units that are in poor condition, and they're trying to be reevaluated in regards to whether they will repair or replace them. We should have an update on that the next meeting we have. We talked about the ongoing issue of the mic cords running across the floor in all the courts, and see if we can install a runner to get that safety issue resolved. We discussed the judges' parking, which needs to be repairing, but make sure we don't put any signage so that people don't know where the judges are, who park it at. And we're going to address the costing of that at next meeting. We recognize the landscaping for the 50th Court District is being in-house now, and there are the 2 spots in front of the court has been restriped. Moving on to the IT court interface, we will discuss at the next meeting. The MDIC contract, I believe, is up for renewal at the end of this month, which requires yearly reporting. They're thinking about changing or moving to an hourly rate for their attorneys based on the $300 per day at 3 hours budget. The budget is based on travel and caseload. Discussed the working relationships of who works for whom, understanding that the director there works for the mayor, and we may need to do a little title adjustment for the executive position. And certainly we understand that the salary split between Pontiac and Waterford, and one of the assigned magistrate, Paulette, will be leaving the 1st of May, and they need to be a replacement. We moved on to the office of the prosecutor's office, discussed the expungement fair, which was previously scheduled for April 6th, but that is getting revamped, so that one was rescheduled. Met with also the RJAC committee, and the OCPO met with Kano Phillips, and they have entered into a partnership, and we'll be discussing some things that will go forward. and the June 3rd meeting that they're planning expungement fair on June 3rd at UWM. Pre-registration will be required. Discuss the warrant recall program, discuss the Safe Sanctuary event where people can turn themselves in. We talked about the Braver Angels workshop and skill building, which was supposed to take place Monday, April 10th at 7 p.m. And that was the end of our discussion. That is the end of our law and courts discussion, sir. Thank you, for the President.
Thank you. For the Parks, Recreation, and Public Works Subcommittee, the Subcommittee Chair, Councilwoman James.
Yes, Parks, Recreation, and Public Works Subcommittee did meet on March the 27th, and I'm going to try to give a scaled-down report, but just want to hit some of the highlights. The Bodette Park baseball diamond will be getting some much-needed work to correct the drainage and the turf issues, and that work should be done sometime this summer. The new skate park is on track to start construction there. That will be being constructed in Oakland Park. There will be an official groundbreaking ceremony that would be planned for that, and the public will be invited. The Senior Center renovations for the Ruth Peterson and the Bowen Center are ongoing. There has been some delay, though, because of when they got into the work, there were some unforeseen things that came about. And so the original timing for having that work complete, which I believe was in June, is probably going to slide just a little bit, but the reason is because there have been some unforeseen issues that had to be resolved. An RFP has gone out for a coordinator to manage the popular summer lawn chair garden series that will take place again this summer. The city does have funding for it, but they are in the process of hiring an event coordinator to plan and to manage that whole process. We talked about the Pontiac home repair program and the fact that many residents are reaching out to us about that, wanting to know when it's going to begin. And we did ask administration to set some kind of a date for when that application process will take place. And administration has, since that meeting, put out some information to residents about that program. Citywide cleanup will take place at the week of April 17th through Earth Day, which is Saturday, April the 22nd. The closeout party will be held at Bodette Park from 1 to 3, and everybody that plans to participate and help us clean up our city are welcome to attend. Community center acquisition. We are working to negotiate. As you know, we're attempting to purchase the McCarroll School site as our community center. We are still working to negotiate a purchase for that agreement for that site. The hope is to have something by April the 24th, which is the date of our option to purchase, the last date of our option to purchase. So it's possible that could be extended, but we are still actively in the process of acquiring a site for the community center. Youth Recreation reported that signups for the spring-summer program are going good, but we did talk about the need to get more hands-out and word-of-mouth information out to families that are not so technically advanced. So we did talk about that, and we are going to be working on that. Public Works, DPW, they are in the process of making signal modernization on Auburn Road. And also they are finalizing work as far as street work. They're finalizing street work on Hazel Street, the City Hall parking lot, and Ottawa Street. The work should start within 30 days on those three sites. Also, Councilwoman Rutherford asked if Earl Moore could be added to the street repair list and be given priority. Sidewalk repair, we have a sidewalk repair is going on in selected areas in District 2 and District 3. And also, one of the things that we're going to talk about tonight is that the city is in the process of purchasing lawn mowing equipment so that we can, as of this summer season or spring season, begin cutting our own grass in the parks. We will have city employees cutting the grass in all of the parks this summer, and we're in the process of purchasing equipment that they will be able to use to do that. That's the end of my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Pro Tem Carrington is not with us this evening. He is the Subcommittee Chair for Public Safety, Health, and Wellness. So we'll move on now to recognition of elected officials. Are there any current officials representing the City of Pontiac that wish to have the floor this evening? Seeing none, we're now at Agenda Address, where community members have 2 minutes to address items on this evening's agenda. The first that is signed up is Mr. Carlton Jones.
Good evening. I want to speak to a couple items that's on the agenda today, and they're not new per se, but the housing program, which everybody have a lot of interest in, and also just the whole thing about affordable housing. Anytime that we are engaging services, one of the new things that's going now is OJT, on-the-job training. And I'm recommending that we be aggressive towards making sure when we are bringing in contractors that they can, at the beginning, talk about incorporating some OJT inside their proposals. If we like to select it and engage it, because that's what our community needs, is on-the-job training. And if we can get that incorporated in the proposal process, which a lot of communities are doing now, you then uplift your community. So those areas when we're doing this home improvement, looking at different types of housing improvements, we need to make sure our contractors come to the table with OJT. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Mr. James McQueen talking about item number 17, the Oakland Forward Education Justice Meeting. You have the floor, sir.
Good evening to the City Council, Mayor, and dignitaries in the audience. Yes, I am here to talk about the Education Justice Summit, which will be coming up on the 17th here and the 19th in Oak Park. It is with belief from Councilman Goodman and Oakland Forward that is very important for our community to not only know how to advocate for education needs, but also make sure that we are able to have clear, dedicated opportunity to communicate those needs to our state representative, Brenda Carter, who will be here that day to join us that day. We thank him for working with us to create an opportunity for Oakland Forward to facilitate this important dialogue here in Pontiac. I have flyers for the event if anyone wants to take those with you. Yes. Okay. And so I'll be here for the duration of the meeting for the most part. I might be tipping out a little bit early, but if you have any questions or want to help us out with that, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you. The final sign up for agenda address this evening is Mr. Chuck Johnson. Mr. Chuck Johnson. All right, that concludes agenda address. Community members will have another opportunity for public comment later on during the meeting to speak and address items not limited to agenda items. We're now at, under ordinances, number 8 on the agenda, the zoning map ordinance amendment with conditions at 484 Auburn. Is there a motion to approve that amendment? Is there a second?
Support.
It's been moved by Councilman Rutherford, seconded by Councilman Nicholson. So we now have this before us. There was a first reading last week. Ordinance amendments, including zoning matters, require 2 readings. So the first reading was last week. This is the second reading, and so now it's before us for further consideration. Give the floor to the mayor and staff to roll out further information.
Thank you, Mr. President. As you noted, this was introduced to council last week on first reading, and it's a proposal to rezone property at 484 Auburn. So this is the second meeting it'll be discussed. Manager Andrick, feel free to take it away and add any additional information that you feel needs to be emphasized again.
Absolutely. So I have a smaller presentation than last week, really setting up what was discussed and what was requested by Councilmember Nicholson. I do have some of the additional slides later on if you need to reference anything, but again, this is just describing this rezoning. The address is 484 Auburn. The applicant is Audie Peleg, and the proposal is a conditional rezoning from C1 to C3. This rezoning allows flexibility for future land uses on the property. A site plan is not part of this rezoning process. Up on the screen right now is the timeline, and tonight is the second reading. If the rezoning was approved, a future site plan process with Planning Commission approval would be required. So these are just background information about the site. On the left is the location as it relates to Auburn, which is the road on the north, and I believe, I'm forgetting the cross street, forgive me, Francis that's on the right there. On the right, this is showing just the existing building. It has been vacant for some time, but there's been a various amount of land uses, most recently kind of a community center nonprofit that was there. This is highlighting the zoning districts along Auburn. I do want to, the area in the center with the kind of the bluish outline is the subject site for the rezoning. Along Auburn, there are a bunch of C1 and C3 properties. And just to differentiate, C1 is more of a local business. It's meant to be more pedestrian scale with the uses that are there. C3 is corridor commercial, and so that allows more intense uses, sometimes outside storage, things you would find on Woodward and Cesar Chavez as examples in the city. And as you can tell, it's a mix of this on Auburn currently between Shirley Avenue and Martin Luther King Boulevard. So City Council, in its review of a zoning map amendment, there are 10 standards. I mentioned these last week. If there's any questions about these standards, I will let you know, but these are the standards you're looking to evaluate in the request. In the packet, there's a little bit more detail in regards to analysis of these standards. So the difference between a C3 and C1, and this was shown last week, is just the 5 uses that are up here. And these are the major differences. And these are uses that are either allowed or allowed to receive special exception approval. And that would be unlimited outdoor retail sales, automobile service for industrial vehicles, light manufacturing, mini warehouse, and non-toxic wholesale storage and distribution. The 4 that are with the stars require a special exception permit, which is like a special land use where Planning Commission gets to evaluate whether this use fits and if any other site requirements are needed to ensure that it does not negatively impact the surrounding environment. The request last week from Councilmember Nicholson was understanding the property owner and their involvement with the city of Pontiac. So there's a 2-page report that was submitted by one of our planning staff. And the applicant currently owns 17 properties in the city. As you look at the list, there's a couple that have multiple tenant spaces within it. The applicant has had 4 minor property or code enforcement violations, property maintenance or code enforcement violations since 2020 that have been fixed, with the only one outstanding for garbage and rubbish on the property and front yard off pavement parking. I can't confirm that those have been fixed. Okay, so, and we will continue to evaluate that property. Now, with that said, the applicant has worked with the building department, particularly over the last 12 months, to improve many properties in the city that they currently own. And many of these are rental properties. So tonight's rezoning is a little bit of a different request for more of a commercial property. So just to summarize the Planning Commission meeting again, the applicant originally provided requested the use for multiple uses. One of those was for vehicle storage, but during the meeting expressed to Planning Commission a different use, and we talked about this last week, and that was really for a wholesale distribution for their art gallery. And this would be storage of materials. It would be for some light manufacturing assembly to have these on the site. And this would be wholly within the building. As part of this, the applicant voluntarily offered the 2 conditions of approval for this rezoning. 1, no heavy machinery to be used on the site, and 2, no outside storage except for the use of a dumpster, which is common for facilities like this. So Planning Commission, with those conditions, recommended approval 3-2 for the rezoning of C1 to C3. Planning Commission, again, makes recommendations to City Council, who's the policy body for modifications to the city's zoning code. Along with this ordinance tonight, as you notice on the agenda, there's also a resolution for City Council to allow the mayor to sign a conditional rezoning agreement, which would be recorded with this property to outline these conditions. So that is my report. I'd be happy to take any questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Rutherford?
Good evening, Mark.
Okay.
So what is the timeline? And I know we have to vote on this, is different for them to repair the other properties that they own. Because my only hesitant is if those properties ain't together, what's gonna make this different?
Yeah. Really, the report was solely on violations. Now, some of the other properties are going to take rehab work. We are not in an agreement with the applicant on those properties specifically, so I do not have a timeline for that. And you can definitely ask the applicant if you desire. So
I would like to ask the applicant that.
okay. Okay.
You wanna get up?
I'd like to recognize President Pro Tem William A. Carrington as present and voting at 6:36
So,
p.m.
Good evening, everyone.
good evening, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Very well. So do you have a timeline on the repairs of the other properties that you own?
So it's not really repairs. We're rehabbing one on 253 Wilson, West Wilson. We're just waiting on the electrician so we could final that out. And then for any violations, it was caused by tenant maybe leaving some garbage out or parking in the front yards. But if I could show you one or two of the properties, we really take good care to make the properties really nice. There's one on Orchard Lake Road. It's 394 Orchard Lake. It sits up on the hill. We redid everything on that home.
Only reason why I'm asking, because both of your properties happen to be in my district, so I just want to ensure that if we vote on this, even though it has nothing to do with other, I just want you to.
You're talking about Auburn?
No, Wilson and Orchard Lake. I just want.
Okay.
That's all. So that's why, it's just for my own clarity.
see.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilman Goodman, Councilman Nicholson, are either you planning to yield to the applicant?
No.
Okay, so you can have a seat.
Thank you.
Don't want to keep you on the hot seat if folks weren't going to yield to you. All right, Councilman Goodman, you're next on the speakers list.
So as I'm looking through the criteria for, looking at this rezoning, I noticed in multiple different sections of this, there are comments made that the current C1 zoning is more compatible for the area as it stands. And I do see a couple different explanations for that. One of which being that the C1 district allows for a wide variety of uses. There's no evidence that this property cannot be reasonably used as currently zoned. So I do know that it's in a more mixed-use area. Having grown up in the Riverside, grown up on Sanford, Auburn, and Pike, I know that area very well. And it's very much connected to the neighborhood. It's ideally, when you look at it, it's meant to be more of a inter-community sort of commercial corridor that's kind of meant to be, at least how I would describe it, walkable. The closest thing that you'd get to really like an integrated situation. But in saying that, I see like a couple different points back in here to possibly keeping the C1 zoning. And I want you to possibly like expand upon that and give an explanation for, those commentaries.
Yeah. The staff report that was compiled by Carlisle Wortman, and we had talked through this process, really did not recommend approval for this rezoning, just because our master plan talks about pedestrian scale, despite the zoning that currently exist on Auburn, that pedestrian scale zonings are important for the surrounding neighborhoods. And those pedestrian scale are more local businesses that you'd be able to walk to. And so, that's at least planning, looking at the master plan's long-term fear. If there's a lot of industrial-like buildings on this corridor, does that negatively impact some of the surrounding neighborhoods? That was some of our considerations in our own planning research, but also working with the recommendations out of the master plan.
And going along with that, I know there is a lot of effort in terms of the city's overall desire, and I'd say a good portion of the council, to try to create a situation in the city where we create arguably the best situation for residents. And I do understand, obviously, the need to have commercial corridors. They are extremely important to the city's tax base, to our ability to be able to have commerce. It's critically important. However, I do want to make sure that I highlight the concerns for essentially in many ways decreasing the restrictions on this corridor and opening it up to more heavy uses because of the ways in which these specific corridors are planned out, that way that they are meant to function for cities, opposed to a road like, again, really to say Cesar Chavez or to say Woodward, the load for this area. So I just want us to be very mindful and look through these different commentaries from the staff in terms of, questioning if rezoning is necessarily a thing that has to happen for this corridor specifically.
Pro Tem Carrington, followed by Councilwoman James and Councilman Parker.
I'll yield for now, President.
Councilwoman James.
Yes, I had this property confused with the building that's going up at the corner of Sanford and Auburn Avenue. I don't know why I thought that was what we were talking about, and when I looked at you're actually talking about a few blocks down. I'm not sure what the name of that building is, but I know exactly where it's at. I am really comfortable with going to changing the zoning there, because I think Auburn for long term has just been one of those communities where you have that mixture, and it has worked effectively for a long time. I'd like to see us build on that, but it's being effective for right now. What I would ask, though, is does he plan to make any kind of aesthetic changes to that building? It's a kind of an older building, and it's been kind of painted, and but it's still not the most attractive. I'm just wondering, did he have plans to, because I know the one on Sanford, which I thought it was, are expanding and doing some renovations there. I'm just wondering, does he plan to do any kind of aesthetic changes to the building?
We have talked about some conceptual ideas, but I don't have anything specific to share as to what they're looking to do.
Okay.
But he would be required to go through a site plan process and a special exception process through Planning Commission. And I want to reiterate that there really is some opportunities there, not just to the architecture of the building, but to landscaping and site design that would help improve that property and that corner.
Yeah, thank you.
Councilman Parker?
Thank you, sir. And so, if I heard you correctly, you said when the Planning Commission looked at the master plan, that the master plan didn't support this change.
That is correct.
Okay. And if the master plan doesn't support the change, and the question that Councilman James asked, I'm certain that if we wanted to blend into the neighborhood, that there should be some landscaping also involved in the planning.
That would be correct.
And if I'm not mistaken, in that process, if you change it from what it is to what they're asking C3, that it requires that something be built there within a certain time frame?
So this conditional rezoning does not have a time frame. This would be a permanent change with the exception of those two conditions that are listed. So really it would be if it was approved, it would be C3 in perpetuity, and it would just have to follow those two conditions of no heavy machinery on site and no outside storage. And that could be, a hardware store couldn't have, landscaping outside for sale. You couldn't have a car dealership there. Those are examples of outside storage. Other than that, that this is a permanent rezoning that once adopted. So.
Thank you.
Pro Tem, I do want to answer Councilman James's question. So this most recently was Friends Assisting in Recovery, or FAIR. So it's across the street from the Frosty Treat. Decades ago, it was OJ's Lounge. So those were the most commonly known uses of the building. Immediately on the other side of South Francis is a larger structure that was Hodges Plumbing Supply. That was their location for many decades. So just want to give folks to orient themselves to your question, Councilman James. Pro Tem Carrington, you have the floor.
Thank you, President McGinnis. I just want to ask a couple of questions. Actually, maybe one. The staff recommendations, it was really no support for this particular rezoning.
That is correct.
Okay. And the Planning Commission decided to make a recommendation instead.
Correct. Once the two conditions were offered at Planning Commission, staff's recommendation was based on a straight rezoning, and no conditions were offered by the applicant when we were reviewing.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Mayor Grimer?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask for clarification on, because the memo, as I understand it, from the city's planning consultant, Dick Carlisle, is dated on March 6th and was in reference to a request for rezoning for purposes of allowing a vehicle storage facility.
Yep.
That was before the planning commission meeting where the applicant offered conditions and also changed the proposed use of the property. So Dick Carlisle never issued a memo about the conditional rezoning, did he?
No, he did not.
Okay, so
Yep.
he didn't offer an opinion. When you say that he opined that this was in conflict with the master plan, he has not opined in any way about this proposal, because his opinion that it wasn't in line with the master plan had to do with a different proposal that did not involve any conditions, correct?
That is absolutely correct, because Mr. Carlisle was not at the planning commission meeting, so there really wasn't any opportunity for staff to opine further than what was originally submitted with the zoning map amendment application.
Yeah, so I just want to clarify that the consultant hired by the city has not said that the proposal before us this evening is not compatible with the master plan.
Correct. Because of the conditions that were offered by the applicant, you are correct.
And I guess the other question I have is, one of the things that Dick Carlisle does mention in his memo is that the master plan recognizes the need to encourage redevelopment of older buildings along corridors such as Auburn. How long has this property been vacant?
Someone may know this answer better than I do, but I believe it's been approximately 5 or plus years, but I don't know that for certain.
It has been more than 5, but less than 10.
Okay, thank you.
And Friends Assisting in Recovery has since located to another location still in the city, but on Montcalm, just east of Baldwin.
Thank you.
I believe that was originally a bowling alley. Mayor Grimal, did you have anything further?
That's it.
Okay, Councilman Rutherford?
Oh, I was just, because it was OJ's before it was that. So it used to be a club, then it became this. So it was like, you was right, 5 to 10.
Councilman Goodman?
Would it be reasonable to possibly make the ask of the administration to have the consultant look at what is now the proposed use of the site? Because if we're having if we're attempting to go on this based on, obviously, since we have staff to do a job in regarding to zoning as well as a planning commission, I think it'd at least be fair to have knowledge from both the staff and the planning commission on equal footing, opposed to what it's sounding like, based on what I've gathered from the mayor, that the planning commission made the recommendation on I wouldn't say completely different, but on I'd say decently different situation. That'd be fair.
We can definitely do that if the city council so chooses. And one of the things that would be reviewed is just solely those 2 conditions, not necessarily what the use is being proposed here, because other uses, whether it be the current property owner or the future property owner, could request any use that is allowed in a C3 or allowed with a special exception in a C3.
Right, and to further go on to that, can you give some more examples of what would be a C3 type business that would exist in a corridor such as Auburn?
As I mentioned, automobile sales, there's a lot. Really, these are the 3 key ones. If I can go back to the slide, the 5 key ones, that these are not permitted in the C1 and either are permitted by right or permitted with a special exception in the C3. So these are really the large things you're evaluating that could be approved for this property.
Anything further? Nope. Mayor Grimal.
Well, they would be allowed in C3, but they would not be allowed for this property because outdoor storage wouldn't be allowed, right?
You are correct in that, yes.
All right, Mr. Yandrick, just for my comments, could you pull up the aerial view that shows the current C1 and C3 zoning for the Auburn corridor in this area? So as the city council person for district number 7, which covers the entirety of the aerial view here, it's my position that most harmful for residents in our east side is that we have a major corridor in our city that is in many parts barren or vacant. And I don't think that the residents, as they've expressed to me, are appreciative that there are many, many parcels of abandoned buildings, derelict buildings, vacant land, trash-strewn land. We, in fact, even though it's a major artery in our city have dumping that happens along Auburn Avenue. We're on the side streets, somebody passing through Pontiac, they think, oh, this looks abandoned, let me just dump it here. And so we have to do a lot of action when it comes to clearing our right-of-way. So I'm interested in seeing Auburn and Pike and MLK and all of the other thoroughfares on the east side of Pontiac stable, clean, presentable, thriving. And as you could see from the zoning, there are many parcels that are currently C3. I mentioned across South Francis for generations was Hodges Building Supply, a pretty heavily and heavy use site when it came to how the zoning was utilized. One of the major remaining active buildings on the Auburn corridor is a furniture restoration business. You might know it, it's close to Sanford and Auburn. That is more of a C3 usage than a C1. I appreciate that it's an open building that's well maintained, employing Pontiac residents, and it's an active part of the downtown artery, or I should say the Pontiac artery that leads from the eastern boundary of our city all the way to the downtown. And so I look forward to whatever the zoning is for Auburn to be clean, Auburn to be well maintained, the businesses of Auburn ideally to be open, and the vacant land on Auburn to be developed on. And I'm open to multiple mixed uses that happens. We have to ensure through code enforcement, through planning requirements, that no matter the parcel, that the property owners, the private property owners, do what they're supposed to do. They keep it clean, they keep it maintained, they follow the code, they follow the building requirements. And part of our frustration as residents is that historically that hasn't happened on many arteries. And so a part of our concern or hesitation is that, okay, if something comes in here, is this going to be legit? Is it going to be maintained? And is the city going to do its part to make sure that private investors, property owners are doing their part? So I have no concern representing this particular neighborhood in this parcel that C1 versus C3 will negatively hinder the nearby residents. And what we'll need to make sure through the special exception or site plan process or even just the operation of a facility is that they're doing right as required already. And that's a task on us as the citizens of Pontiac who have this city government and hire and enlist these folks, that we make sure that we're making sure that these private property owners are doing right for any parcel. So I hope within the future years we see Auburn no longer have vacant buildings, that Auburn no longer even has vacant land unless it's well landscaped or green space. But what we have right now is unfortunately not satisfactory for the residents of the east side. There were in the times of the 50s and the 60s, including when this building was likely built in the late 40s or early 50s, every parcel had a home on it in the neighborhood, and they were active and occupied family homes. Every building on that strip had a storefront in it, be it meat markets, grocery stores, small services. You mentioned, Councilman James, at South Sanford and Auburn on that southeast corner. So that was an automobile service station in the last decade, the last time it was opened, but it's been pretty vacant for the last 10 years, was like an auto repair shop. And so we look forward to seeing what that expansion means. But we just had an incident across the street from that, a vacant land at the corner of Sanford and Auburn, at the northeast corner, where the private property owner basically went carte blanche, put in a fence, and started using it not to code and not to what the city permitted. And I just want to thank the city staff and the Zoning Board of Appeals and all those in the various steps that local government worked in this instance where code was enforced and requirements for building and fences, and if they didn't pull a permit, was enforced. And now that private property owner has had to remove their new 6-foot fence that they installed right to the street, which was an obstruction for drivers, a nuisance for residents, and they've had to clear out their use. So I think it's incumbent on us as a city to make sure that all of our corridors, but especially Auburn, that we're enforcing, cleaning up, and making sure that no matter what the zoning use is, that these private property owners are doing right by the citizens of Pontiac. So I'll be voting in favor of this. I don't have any illusion that C1 or C3 zoning here will guarantee that this building will be saved. And it's not a guarantee that even there will be a thriving business on this particular parcel, as with any other parcel. But as we can see from the aerial view, most in this stretch are C3, and I don't view this as like the outlier or the sore thumb for an abandoned building that I pray will have life in it once more, will be presentable and beautiful for the residents of South Francis, for North Francis, for any of the side streets, and there are thousands of people that drive Auburn every day, and I look forward to being a beautiful, more thriving corridor. Mayor Greimel.
I strongly agree with every word of that, and I think it's really, just to amplify that point even further, I think it's really important to take into account the fact that the applicant is offering these conditions, because the majority of the C3 zoning that does exist there does not have those conditions. And when we referenced the slide earlier that described the uses that are generally permitted on C3 but not permitted on C1, some of those uses were potentially problematic because of outdoor storage. But one of the conditions being offered by the applicant specifically will prohibit outdoor storage. So it's not only is there a lot of C3 along the corridor already, but this is not full-blown C3. It's really C3 light. It's something between C1 and C3, which is all the more reason to approve it.
Is that other further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, we now are at speakers list concluded. We are at roll call and adoption of the motion to amend the zoning map ordinance with conditions at 484 Auburn. Clerk Doyle.
Parker.
On the strength of our president's filibuster, I vote yes.
Rutherford.
Yes.
Carrington.
Yes.
Goodman.
Yes.
James.
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Nicholson.
Yes.
7 yeas, no nays.
That motion carries. The ordinance, the motion is adopted. The ordinance is amended accordingly for that 484 Auburn. We look forward to the progress to come. And with that, is there a motion to adopt the resolution to authorize the mayor to execute the conditional rezoning agreement regarding 484 Auburn?
Moved by Carrington.
Support.
It's been moved by Pro Tem Carrington, seconded by Councilman Parker. This is essentially an accompanying motion to the item that was just considered as was presented. Mayor and administration, anything further you would like council to consider with this, essentially authorizing the mayor to execute that conditional rezoning agreement? Hearing no further discussion, presentation rather, any further discussion on the motion? Hearing no further discussion, speakers list exhausted. Roll call, Clerk Doyle.
Rutherford.
Yes.
Carrington.
Yes.
Goodman.
Yes.
James.
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Nicholson.
Yes.
Parker.
Yes.
7 yeas, no nays.
That motion carries. The resolution is adopted. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution acknowledging Armenian Genocide Remembrance Day?
So moved.
Support.
It's been moved by Councilman Goodman, seconded by Councilwoman Rutherford. And so April 24th internationally is recognized as Armenian Genocide Remembrance Day. And for the first time in known Pontiac history, we want to ensure that our city acknowledges that somber part in world history and the many Armenian American community members that Pontiac has had, both residents and business owners, over the last century plus. Any further discussion on the motion before us? Hearing none, roll call and adoption of the resolution. Clerk Doyle.
Carrington.
Yes.
Goodman.
Yes.
James.
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
Parker.
Yes.
Rutherford.
Yes.
6 yeas, no nays.
That motion carries. The resolution is adopted. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution to approve the proposed budget amendment to established budget appropriations in the amount of $99,214 to account 285-485-977.007 ARP DPW mowers, $10,998 to account number 285-458-977.009 ARP DPW trailers, and $2,000 to account number 285-458-977.008 ARP DPW special equipment. Is there such a motion?
I make a motion.
Support.
It's been moved by Councilman James, seconded by Councilman Goodman. That motion is now before us. Mayor and Administration, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is the accompanying budget amendment that allows for funding the authorization given by City Council last week for the city to move forward with buying mowers and trailers. But for additional information regarding the details of the budget amendment, I defer to Deputy Mayor Stevens.
Thank you, Mayor Grimo. As with other amendments of this type in the past, this is largely a procedural issue. You've already heard the reasoning behind it. You've already heard all of the rationale. This is just the actual paperwork to finalize what you have approved previously, and I'm here for any questions, and it looks like we may have one.
All right, first on the speaker's list, Councilman Rutherford.
Deputy Mayor, 2 questions. What's the timeline when these mowers will be delivered?
They should be delivered relatively quickly. They will be here in time for the spring season of mowing.
Second question, are people going to be trained to use these mowers properly? Because we have people that work level 1 and level 2, and what we don't want to happen is that you have people who are not experienced mowers to be mowing, and then they break the equipment, and then you guys come back 6 months later saying we got to get more mowers.
Well, of course, all of our equipment operators will be properly trained to use the equipment.
Thank you.
Further discussion on the motion before us. We heard this 2 weeks ago when we authorized the posting of the budget amendment. Councilman James shared, of course, it was also discussed in the Parks, Recreation, and Public Works Subcommittee level as well. Any further discussion? We did also authorize the purchase of the mowers, so that was its own debated item as well last week. So this is, if I recall correctly, and this is the budgetary alignment for what that authorization was given. All right. Hearing no further discussion, roll call on adoption of the motion for the resolution to approve the proposed budget amendment. Clerk Doyle.
Goodman,
Yes.
James,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Nicholson,
Yes.
Parker,
Yes.
Rutherford,
Yes.
Carrington.
Yes.
7 yeas, no nays.
That motion carries. The resolution is adopted and the budget's hereby amended. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution to approve the proposed budget amendment for this budget year, increasing the appropriation in the following GL accounts: 249371702.000 salary and wages by $19,140, 249371715.000 FICA city contribution by $1,465, 249371716.000 medical insurance by $3,000, and 249371718.500 MERS employer contribution by $975. Is there such a motion?
I make the motion. Support.
Moved by Councilman Rutherford, seconded by Councilman Nicholson. The motion is before us. First, we'll give the floor to the administration for any introduction of the motion before us, and then Councilman Rutherford first on the speaker's list.
Thank you, Mr. President. This proposed agenda item comprises a variety of budget amendments to facilitate the hiring of an additional staff person to facilitate the home repair program that is being launched by the city. And again, for details around the specific moving around of funds, I defer to Deputy Mayor Stevens.
Thank you, Mayor, Council President. So again, we discussed this particular item previously. This is now the official paperwork to make the funds available to actually pay for this new position. You will see specifically under salaries and wages, $19,140 is being moved, but as you read the description, it says, if approved, this inspector will be paid an annual salary of $76,550. The reason why those two numbers are different, we're only putting in enough money now to carry through the end of this fiscal year, and then with the new budget that comes out, it will be budgeted at that full amount. If you have any general questions, I am here, but any specific questions, we do have individuals from that department who can speak to the workings of the position.
Councilman Rutherford?
Ms. Deborah Younger, can I ask you a couple of questions, please?
You want to turn the microphone bottom right? You're live.
Okay. Good evening, Council, Mayor, Deputy Mayor.
Okay. Good evening, Ms. Younger. What's the timeline for this position to be filled?
We are interviewing now and would like to make an offer soon, like this week,
Thank you.
pending the disapproval.
And the name of the position?
This is Building Inspector Home Repair.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilman Parker?
I just want to bring to attention.
Microphone?
I'm sorry. Thank you, sir. I just want to bring to the committee's attention, on page 2 of this, it lists the salary increase at $119,000. And I just want to make sure we correct that. Page 2.
Yeah, there's an extra one.
There's an extra one in there.
Yep.
But that's in the memo, not in the language of the resolution.
No, it's in the language of the resolution. Now therefore be it resolved. Good catch.
I just want to make sure we ain't sliding nothing through.
Yeah, there's an extra one.
If it is, I want to get the difference.
With that, okay, thank you.
So,
So Councilman Parker is going to make a motion to amend the resolution.
Support.
Seconded by Councilman Rutherford, that it reads, now therefore be it resolved that the budget of the city of Pontiac, Michigan for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2023 is hereby amended as follows for the building division, the appropriation for GL account number 249-371-702.000 salaries and wages shall be increased by $19,140. He's moving to amend, so that way the number now reads $19,140. Moved by Parker, seconded by Rutherford. Any discussion on that particular amendment? Hearing no further discussion, roll call on adoption of that amendment. Clerk Doyle, nixing 119,140 and replacing it with 19,140.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Nicholson,
Yes.
Parker,
yes.
Rutherford,
Yes.
Carrington,
Yes.
Goodman,
Yes.
James.
Yes.
7 yeas, no nays.
That motion carries. The amendment has been approved and is now part of the main resolution as amended before us. Continuing on the speaker's list, was there anything further? No. Thank you very much for that. Councilman Nicholson?
So this building inspector will be a multifaceted inspector. Just because this program really spans pretty much every kind of home repair.
That's correct.
Okay, great, thank you.
I did have a question.
Councilman Parker?
Ms. Younger, you stated that you're already interviewing for the spot,
Yes.
and you already have some candidates that could be promoted by the end of this week?
We have several good candidates and one we'd like to extend an offer to.
Okay. And is this a new position? And if so, do we have a written job description?
The answer to both is yes. It's new in that it's going to be assigned to the home repair, but it follows the normal building inspector specification. But the difference is the assignment is to the home repair program.
Okay. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, roll call on adoption of the motion before us, which is the resolution to approve the proposed budget amendment as so amended, with the incorporated change already voted on. Clerk Doyle, roll call.
James,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Nicholson,
Yes.
Parker,
Yes.
Rutherford,
Yes.
Carrington,
Yes.
Goodman.
Yes.
7 yeas, no nays.
That motion carries. The resolution is adopted and the budget's hereby approved. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution to authorize the application for the Environmental
Moved by
Justice
Carrington.
So moved.
Government to Government EJG2J program through EPA? Sounded like there was a move by Pro Tem Carrington and a second by Councilman Rutherford. That motion is now before us, and this is very exciting. We give the floor to Deputy Mayor and Administration.
Again, thank you, Council President. We do have a member from the Grants and Philanthropy Department to describe further exactly what it is that we are doing here. I will just say that this is an exciting opportunity Some grants that we apply for require council permission before we apply, and this is one of those grants.
Mr. Martin, you have the floor.
Hi, thank you. Just to reiterate, this is a resolution to approve the application for this grant. It has not been applied for yet, so this is not accepting funds. But it is through the Environmental Protection Agency, and should the city be successful in our application, we would initiate a program to combat illegal dumping in the city. The details of this program are not entirely worked out yet, but it may include installing cameras at current sites that are being used for illegal dumping to help prevent that from continuing. There is an award ceiling of $1 million, so we should be able to do a lot with that, actually, to combat illegal dumping in the city. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
So you mentioned the award ceiling. Does that mean that the city intends to pursue to the maximum award ceiling up to $1 million
Yes.
if we could?
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. That's very exciting. Councilman Rutherford.
Good evening, Michael. How are you?
Fine, how are you?
Okay, I have one question. What is the timeline for the application until it's actually known if we've been approved or denied? What's the ceiling for it to be applied?
That I am not certain of. It varies. It usually can take several months to receive notice of the award.
All right, thank you so much.
Did you find any record of the city ever receiving comparable funds in past years or decades? Is this a newer initiative as far as your recent assessment goes?
As far as I'm aware, it is.
Okay. Councilman Nicholson.
Good evening, Mr. Martin. Is it customary for us to accompany these award letters with like letters of encouragement or recommendation? I mean, we've had a lot of Congress people grace our chambers in the last few months, and I'm sure they would be open to that. I don't know if it's looked at positively or negatively.
It's generally looked at positively. It's not required by all applications. Some do require letters of recommendation or letters of support, but adding them can make an application a little bit stronger.
Thank you.
And what's the deadline for this application?
This application we will be submitting it this Friday.
This Friday. Councilwoman James?
Yeah, my question was, is it going to be a myriad of things that you're going to be asking for, or is it something the application is going to focus on? You talked about possibly getting some cameras installed, but are you going to be looking at a number of different things, making up one application, or are you going to focus it around the cameras?
I think it will be focused on that and whatever funds are necessary to implement a camera system and whatever it would be necessary for monitoring it.
Okay. So citywide, we're looking at trying to do something like that citywide?
We'll probably focus on the sites that are most heavily used.
Okay.
Pro Tem Carrington, then Mayor Graham.
Actually, my question's been answered.
Okay. Mayor Graham?
Yeah, I just wanted to reflect on some thoughts that Director Borengesser shared with me as well. I know she's been thus far most directly involved in this, and some of this depends on how much funding we get. If we get the full $1 million, Director Borengesser's guess, although we haven't priced out high-quality cameras or done the actual measurements on how many we would need in each location, but Director Borengesser's initial inclination was that if we do get the full $1 million, it may be more money than we need for cameras alone. But I believe the application is focused entirely on preventing and policing dumping in the city. So that could mean other things other than cameras as well, but we certainly want to use a portion of this for cameras. To the extent that we get more funding than is needed or appropriate for cameras alone, we may also utilize it for other purposes. But the entirety of the application, it's my understanding, is focused on preventing dumping.
Further discussion on the motion before us? All right, hearing no further discussion, speakers list is exhausted. Roll call and adoption of the resolution to authorize the City of Pontiac's application for the Environmental Justice Government-to-Government Program through the United States Environmental Protection Agency. Clerk Doyle.
Nicholson?
Yes.
Parker?
Yes.
Rutherford,
Yes.
Carrington,
Yes.
Goodman,
Yes.
James,
Yes.
McGinnis.
Yes.
7 yeas, no nays.
That motion carries. The resolution is adopted. I just want to thank the mayor and staff for prioritizing the prevention of dumping in our neighborhoods and our corridors. It's an issue for quality of life for all of us residents, and we want to see progress. So glad to see more resources being pursued. Is there a motion to
So
adopt?
moved.
All right. It's been moved by Councilman Rutherford and seconded by Councilman Parker. It's the resolution approving abatement services contractors for the home repair program. So that motion to adopt the resolution was moved by Rutherford, seconded by Parker. We give the floor to the mayor and his team to provide context.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is the second set of contractors that are necessary for properly implementing the home repair program. The first set of contractors that have already been approved by City Council are for general home improvement work. But we anticipate that we will be encountering asbestos, lead, potentially other hazardous materials in homes. And as a result, we also need to have contractors who specialize in that kind of abatement so that we're properly, in an environmentally healthy and safe way, abating those potentially hazardous substances that we come across in homes. And this set of contractors is a list that is fully qualified, certified in the work that will need to be done in that regard. Manager Younger, do you have anything to add? I think you and potentially building official Domsky, maybe Ms. Martin too, you may have some additional comments as well.
Thank you. Councilman Rutherford.
Have we done a background check to see if these companies have had any problems in the past? And if so, how was it done? And can we see what you came up with?
Thank you for your question. So yes, we do verify references that are provided for all of the contractors that participated in the solicitation process. Our purchasing assistant was in charge of that endeavor, and I did review that information. And we also make sure that they're registered to do business in the state of Michigan. We check LORA, as well as their licensing to make sure they're appropriately licensed to do this kind of work. So those are the checks that we've conducted.
Okay, so if any time something comes up, this is my follow-up. Thank you.
Okay.
So if one of these individuals has been found out to not, the verification hasn't been correct, or how will we protect the people that they're working on their houses? So what I'm asking is, let's say you said you did the background check, right?
Yes.
And then this individual start working on these people's houses, and then something happens, and we find out later on down the line that what they have submitted or what was submitted wasn't correctly. How are we going to protect the people whose houses they're working on?
So when you say something happens, are you talking about like creating a liability?
Yes, that's what I'm
So
talking
they're
about.
supposed to be properly insured, which they do have proper levels of insurance to perform this work. So if that does occur, then we would go after their insurance.
Okay, thank you.
And then also, I'm sorry, go ahead, Mayor.
Well, just to add to that, I'm inferring, Manager Martin, that we didn't simply rely on what they told us either,
Correct.
that we actually checked with the licensing division at the state. We actually proactively looked into some things so that we're not just taking their word for it.
Correct. Go ahead.
Can I also add that, not all, but I'm getting around to it. I've actually been on site and looked at several of the contractors' work. So I'm not just, it's good to see the paperwork intact, but part of my due diligence is I like to put on my hard hat and my boots and go out. And so I haven't been on all of them yet, but it's on my rotation to go see the work of all the contractors. I've been on several so far, and so I intend to. And that's also the role of hiring the home repair inspector. We intend for that inspector to be on site and inspecting the work, not just inspecting it, but be on site to, also be an advocate for the homeowner to make sure that that work is going according to the specifications that we write. So we expect that home repair inspector to be out there several times a week checking that work so that we can, if work is not being performed, we will suspend the contract and bring somebody in who can do that work. So I'm trying to do due diligence on the front end, and we'll have a home inspector to do it on the back end. So.
Excellent. Councilman Parker?
I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, Manager
No, I
Martin.
just want to add, we also did perform income tax clearance through the income tax department. So if they owe taxes, they had to clear that up before us presenting them before council.
Thank you. Councilman Parker, you have the floor.
Thank you, sir. 3 questions. One, as we were interviewing contractors for this, did we give preference to any that was Pontiac resident?
Unfortunately, we did not have a Pontiac resident company apply. The closest was White Lake, Michigan. So that's CTI Contractor Services that applied.
Okay. Next question, did we look at diversity?
Yes.
I presume we did.
So there is a woman-owned business, which is the CTI Contractor Services that I indicated. That's woman-owned. And then the other companies had their lead abatement certifications.
Okay. And I just wanted to thank you for your due diligence as opposed to the hazard abatements issues, because I know if it's an older building, you're going to run into some.
Right. And just to be clear, there are not as many contractors, minority or majority, that are certified in both lead and asbestos abatement. One of the things that we're working on is to get more people licensed. We, in fact, will be having the building inspector that we hire go to lead abatement and asbestos abatement training to get certified so that they can inspect the work properly if the candidate that we interview does not have those certifications. And in most instances, they don't because they're specialized. There's only a handful that are certified in both lead and asbestos in the state of Michigan. So it's our goal to reach out and make sure that we have diversity, and but given the field that's out there, that's something that it doesn't exist a lot. We're working with some agencies down the road to help us get businesses that are actually certified in that, and particularly those the Spanish-speaking community as well. So, we have outreach with agencies that are going to help us work on seeing if we can get businesses certified for these specialties.
Yeah. And
Mayor Graham.
But my understanding is, although it is indeed disappointing that we don't have more diversity or Pontiac-based businesses in today's specialized contractor list, we do have Pontiac-based businesses and Black-owned businesses in the other list of contractors that was previously approved. Is that right?
That is correct. There are general contractors who represent Pontiac as well as diversity and minority, and some of the generals are in fact lead and asbestos certified, but there are some who are not. So in the case of those who don't have that certification, we didn't want to preclude them, so we're bringing in people who are in fact certified in lead and asbestos. So they would come in first, do that work, and then the general would come in after that.
Any further discussion on the motion before us? Councilman Rutherford.
Can I get another copy of the general contractors list sent to me, please? Yeah.
Any further discussion on the motion before us? Hearing nothing further, speakers is exhausted. Clerk Doyle, roll call on the adoption of the resolution approving abatement services contractors for the home repair program.
Parker,
Yes.
Rutherford,
Yes.
Carrington,
Yes.
Goodman,
Yes.
James,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Nicholson.
Yes.
7 yeas, no nays.
That motion carries. The resolution is adopted. We're now at public comment. Pro Tem Carrington, who's first up?
Yes, thank you, President McGinnis. Mr. Carlton Jones.
Good evening. This couldn't be a better time. I want you all to know that TDC has been developing young people in lead and abatement training awareness. This is the opportunity when we need them to get engaged with on-the-job training. This is the kind of thing that we have to turn this thing around if we're going to start trying to engage our people. We've got to make sure when contractors come in that they do some on-the-job training of our people locally. They haven't been exposed. My mic is on. Yeah. What, this is going on off?
I think it's better now. Yeah, it's really
Testing? Okay, all right, all right. All right, what I'm saying is this is what we did. We've had 10 cohorts, and what they do in this cohort is learn about lead and abatement, awareness. But they don't get a chance to get engaged until contractors take them on with some on-the-job training. So if we connect the dots, when we have an opportunity, our young people then here in Pontiac can get a chance to learn and get a chance to get licensed once they work with people we hire. That's the OJT part that's lacking. And if we allow contracts to come in here and don't incorporate on-the-job training, we will never get our Pontiac people engaged in it. It's very difficult. I want to say something also about the EPA for dumping. We are truly at the verge where we can do recycling. And I think recycling may fall up under this grant request. If we look at the opportunity to include recycling in our city, it could help with some of this dumping. Just a thought when this proposal. And if we get community support when that grant proposal goes in, the more likelihood it can get looked at for approval. I want to just say tonight, when we're doing things, we went through a whole lot with the process for the marijuana issue. One of the things we got to be really aware of, it happened tonight. With us lacking a master plan, and when people come with special exceptions, and we have hired professionals who's going by the master plan, our hired people go by the master plan, it puts us in a very tight position if we just want to make something good happen. I know it takes time to get that master plan. We've had some council people. I think Councilman Goodman's statement towards, do we go back to these professionals? If we're going to have these hired professionals who we pay, we got to give a good roadmap that we're all going by. And right now, lacking that master plan updated is going to continue to be a thorn in our side. So I want us to really take that to heart because we need to have a solid master plan. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Beatrice Wright.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Council, Clerk Doyle. I wanted to take a moment to review some of the things that I've spoke about in the last few weeks. I've told you about the golf course, and as the golf course in its life was formerly known as the Wilson Golf Course. You might write that down because you might want to do your own research. It was gifted mostly by landowners and people of wealth, much like some of the courses in Detroit were gifted to the city of Detroit. I have not found the language that says you may not sell this golf course, but I hold to this point that those philanthropists were not unlike their cohort. They probably told Pontiac the same thing. I'm going to find it. I haven't given up. So Pontiac Golf Course later became known after Wilson Golf Course as Pontiac Municipal Golf Course. Now just a moment of edification maybe. Municipal golf courses came about because this is a blue-collar state. Middle-class workers, lower-income workers could never afford to play at Oakland Hills Country Club unless on a Monday. And Monday is the day when the caddies play any country club. I think this went off again, but that's how municipal golf courses came into being. And so Detroit probably had 12 municipal golf courses at one time. We had one. It was the jewel. It is the jewel of Pontiac and surrounding areas because that's where everybody came to play golf. And they still, today, I live on the golf course. I saw 100 people at the golf course over today's time. But as the golf course and times evolved, the right wing decided that they were going to take over government, which they did,
and they sent EMs to control cities. They sold off the assets of most cities. They sold off our Silverdome. They sold off our municipal golf course. They sold off our public works land. And they attempted to sell off this building. Now, enter the Links of Crystal Lake, owned by something called 900 Golf Drive LLC out of Lake Orion, and a gentleman who is not Mr. William Parker Jr., District 5.
Make true.
But nevertheless, his name is Mr. Parker. Enter them, and now they're selling the golf course. I've been told that it's sold, but until I see that at the Office of Equalization at the county level, of which they have 30 days to record, I don't believe it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Claude Vinegar.
Let's see. Is it working now? No, it don't sound like it.
Light is on.
Yeah, the lights, that's all we got is light, I think.
Just a point of order, they can hear it at home, we understand, so it's just in this chamber that the speakers aren't properly working. I do just want to point that out.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, I want to thank you all. I think this is a fun time when we can talk about anything. And so basically, I'm still on the overpass going to the hospital, but I'm going a different route right now. I want to talk to Councilman Rutherford, Councilman Goodman, and Councilman McGinnis. And I want to ask everybody in here, first off, do you remember the projects that was between Bagley and Bethune-School? Can everybody raise their hand that remembers the projects? Is this all we have? You from the project? Okay, all right. Now, you were talking about a community. I lived in the projects, okay? I remember when we had Jones Store. Huh? Yeah, I remember when we had Gay's Party Store. And I don't know if y'all remember Miss Weenie's, but she had the best hamburgers in the world, okay? Along with that, we also had a gas station and also Surfside. Now, I don't know how many of you remember Surfside, but this is what I come up with. And the thing is, you were talking last week about housing, you know, trying to get affordable housing. Well, the last time I was really in here, I was wearing what my friends call a $300 suit and some tennis shoes. And I was fighting to try to keep the projects alive. And it was a council just like this, and I was standing there looking good on top, you know. But my thing is, the council that was there did not listen to what I had to say. And what you went through last week is basically a result of that. Because an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, you know. So I'm saying, if we look at this and we look at the overpass the same way, let's not lose that like we lost the projects. Because, I mean, the way I see it, that was a jewel. All I remember is good times, you know. I remember the council telling me all the bad stuff, and I'm like, okay, I live there. No, that's not it. But I'm just saying that for the future, when you're talking about housing and everything, go back and try to think of what we had and what we lost and not lose any more if we can help it. And one of the things is, like I said, the overpass, that was supposed to be for the city of Pontiac. That was supposed to be for the safety of the city of Pontiac. And we have all the money coming in right now. Use it the right way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Renee Beckley.
Okay, I'm going to talk about this Martin Luther King Bridge closure and Woodward bid worked on at the same time to South Boulevard. This is from WXYC TV for August 16, 2020. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard Bridge shut down in Pontiac after inspection deems critical condition. So that's been shut down since August of last year. Also in this story, they said the funding to repair the bridge was supposed to come in November of 2022. Where is the funding? Also, that $37 million that you got, why don't you use some of that to fix the bridge? Now, what I thought was kind of strange is right here, this council right here, they talk a lot of stuff, and they brag and boast on themselves. This is from January 17, 2023, this council meeting here. Resolution to approve the Michigan Department of Transportation MDOT funding agreement for the 2023 MDOT Highway I-75 BL, that's Woodward Avenue, and South Boulevard. Okay, that's all familiar. Contract number 22-5410 to authorize the mayor to sign the agreement. Moved by Councilperson William Parker, and Councilperson Rutherford. Whereas the city of Pontiac has received the funding from the Michigan Department of Transportation, whereas the Department of Public Works Engineering Division has reviewed the subject agreement, and whereas the project is budgeted in 2022-2023 fiscal year. That's right now for a major street budget. So you're working on that now. Now, therefore, it's resolved that the city council authorize the mayor and deputy mayor to sign the MDOT funding agreement 2254 for Woodward Avenue and South Boulevard. Yes, Parker, Rutherford, Carrington, Goodman, James, McGinnis. Anyone said no? No, resolution passed. Now, right after that, immediately, discussion, Dr. Martin Luther King Boulevard South Bridge Repair Action Plan. Does that sound backwards to you? If you live in Pontiac, you know the cars have to have somewhere to go. So you should have spoke about this first and then this. But I went and did the resolution to repair Woodward because there's nowhere to go. Now we have a bad, bad mess. And it started right here in this room. Talk a lot, think less. That's basically what happens in this room. I mean, anybody knows that you got to go, those cars have to go somewhere, but you're going to vote for another project and everything's ongoing. Now, when, Tim, is that going to be repaired, that bridge?
That does conclude your time.
Thank you. Mr. James McQueen? Mr. Chuck Johnson, I don't see him here. That concludes public comment.
Were there any individuals that intended to pursue public comment but didn't sign up this evening that would like to be recognized? All right, hearing none, we'll move to the next item. Discussion, speed humps implementations in our neighborhoods. I want to give the floor to the mayor administration as well as give discussion here about where we stand. In this current year's budget, we have money funding that was dedicated so that way throughout our neighborhoods we could have speed humps to help cut down on excessive and safety-threatening speeding in our neighborhoods. Mayor Grimel, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's been a priority for City Council as well as for my administration to improve safety throughout the community. Part of that is about trying to get drivers to slow down. I think all of us have seen people driving way too fast, especially in neighborhood streets that were never designed for those kinds of speeds. And we've certainly encouraged the Sheriff's Office to do more in terms of traffic enforcement, but we know that that alone isn't enough. And so we've observed other communities deploy speed humps on specific targeted streets where speeding is particularly a problem. And in collaboration with City Council, we have moved forward to do the same. So the council allocated about $500,000 for this fiscal year to obtain and install speed humps on targeted streets. Specifically, there are 21 targeted neighborhood streets where they'll be deployed, 3 in each of the 7 city council districts. That RFP has gone out. It went out last week. We anticipate that we'll have responses by the first week of May, and we intend to very quickly select a firm to provide and install those speed humps. DPW is optimistic that those can be installed by the end of May so that they'll be deployed for the summer, at least the bulk of the summer, as well as the coming fall as well. So we're excited that we're making progress on this. We appreciate the patience of residents. Obviously, we wanted to wait until we got through the winter before deploying these. These, we call them speed humps as opposed to bumps because they are not permanent concrete or asphalt bumps. They're rubber, plastic, metal installations that can be picked up during winter months to allow for ease of snow plowing. In addition to those 21 neighborhood roads, we are also deploying these very same speed humps in Bodette Park at the Mill Dam. There's been a lot of problem with speeding through the road there in the park, and this is designed to make sure that people slow down, especially in the park. We don't want any children getting injured. We had looked at putting down permanent concrete or asphalt bumps at the Mill Dam, but that was substantially more expensive than deploying a series of speed humps there. And with that, Council President, we certainly welcome any questions.
All right. Was that Councilman James? Did you have a hand?
No,
And so Councilman Nicholson had a hand, but Mayor addressed it in terms of Bodette Park. So speaking from the district that has the permanent speed bumps on Marshall Street, well, they work. So it definitely does impact how fast the projectiles on wheels are able to go. So it's important to note that we have submitted, 3 are the number of streets of multiple blocks. It's not just one block, but multiple blocks where we, based on the feedback from our neighbors and residents in our districts, thought that they could do the most good, where there was the biggest issue. And so that is with the administration, and that's where the first round will go. But over the course of them being out there, we can see if it's not really having much of an impact, or there's another area that's got an increase of this safety issues and speeding issues, that they could be redeployed. And if we can find the funding and we find that this is successful, we won't limit it to just those select streets. We'll try and infuse over the years more of these speed humps. So I just want to put that out there. If residents, always keep your ear to the ground, your eyes and ears open, and provide feedback to the city council and the administration, so that way we can have that sense of where the issues are. And the streets that I selected for my district were those where the residents had the biggest concerns and where there was the most sort of likelihood of a cut through, or like that there was a long stretch. Because obviously in many parts of our city we have some really unique one-block dead ends, and then there's an old business that used to be there, so it kind of goes, you can't get as much speed or velocity if you're just, so it was focusing on basically the drag race long stretches, of which Marshall's a great example, that there's many blocks where speeding can happen, but luckily there are permanent speed bumps there as well. Pro Tem Carrington?
Yes, thank you, President. I just want to also thank the last council, because I know this was one of their public cries as well as speed humps in our community. So this council did take that up immediately after we came into taking our seats. So thank you.
Yeah, well put. Any further discussion? And we know that the Sheriff's Department has had increased enforcement. So if in the meantime, whether there is a speed hump out yet, or there's not an area that has a speed hump, but there's still a speeding issue, flag it. We can have it submitted, and there can be increased patrol or enforcement for that or other related safety issues. Hearing no further discussion, we move now to our next discussion item, affordable housing needs in the community. Councilwoman Rutherford wanted to have this on the agenda, so I'll give the floor to you first.
Thank you. 6 things you might not know about affordable housing. You hear the term affordable housing used often, whether in the news or by someone you know. Sometimes misconceptions around affordable housing can cause the term to have a negative connotation. But a home that is considered affordable, meaning the resident is paying no more than 30% of their income on housing, is a win for everyone. Expanding access to safe, stable, and affordable housing is also essential to the undoing of decades of racially discriminatory housing policies and moving toward racial equality and ownership between white families and families of color. That's why it's crucial that we stick to the facts rather than the unfounded fears when discussing affordable housing. Here are some fun facts. Fact number 1. Wealthy homeowners benefit the most from federal housing. That's right. Let's start off from the most surprising but true fact about affordable housing. The bulk of affordable housing doesn't actually support affordable housing. In fact, the disproportionately support wealthy homeowners. That means that's thanks to the mortgage interest deduction. The MID allows homeowners to deduct interest paid on their mortgage from their taxes. The larger the mortgage that you have or the more homes that you have, the more you're able to deduct. Fact 2, affordable housing does not lower property tax values. Research shows conclusively that affordable housing has no negative impact on home prices or the speed or frequency of sales of neighboring homes. Trula has done an extensive study research on this across the country. They have examined that the nation's 20 least affordable markets, analyzing over 3,000 projects with units for low-income earners over a 10-year period. As a whole, there is no significant effect on home owner values located near local income units. Number 3, affordable housing must comply with the same design and construction standards as market rate projects. That's right, people. Building affordable housing doesn't mean a developer gets out of the design and construction standards put in place by the community. Ask a builder and they'll tell you it makes sense to use the same quality materials and techniques for each housing units in a development. You can drive through a few townhome developments throughout the metro area and no way of knowing which habitat owners are on or market rate. Number 4, affordable housing helps local schools raise standardized test scores. As rent rises and wages stagnate, families are forced to move repeatedly to find affordable options. That means their children are not able to stay in the same schools for long, resulting in lower test scores on standardized tests. When a child has a stable home and can remain in a single school system, their test scores rise. This also means children are able to cultivate long-term relationships that will give them a foundation of success. Fact number 5. Affordable housing helps taxpayers build stronger and more vibrant communities. It's simple math. The more housing costs eats up your income, the less you have to invest elsewhere. For folks who need to spend more than a third of their income on housing, things like healthcare, nutritious food, education, transportation, saving for the future, and investing in local economy gets harder to pay for. When you have a home that is affordable for you, all those areas of your community can benefit as well. Number 6. Affordable housing is needed everywhere. Everyone should be able to afford a safe, stable home in a town where work and their kids go to school. A lack of affordable housing projects, many people who Many people who have community success, employees, seniors, and immigrants, low wages, and entry-level workers. Families buy homes in Pontiac because affordable housing is needed everywhere. It is just as important to ensure affordable housing in the historically decimated neighborhoods in Pontiac as it is in the suburbs. Unfortunately, all too common, the perspective of affordable housing is accepted as not in my backyard, and it's abbreviated to NIMBY. The NIMBY opposition to housing investments can cause a major hurdles for developers like Habitat and others to penetrate segregation and inequality. Ultimately, expanding access to affordable housing everywhere will help fulfill the dream of the 1968 Fair Housing Act, which had 2 goals. It was to end discrimination and to require communities to work to the undoing systematic racism and segregation in housing, AKA redlining. This is why affordable housing is needed and necessary, and we have the opportunity to always put affordable housing first so that everyone who wants to own a home in the city of Pontiac can and will be able to do it. That's my presentation.
Okay, other further discussion? Councilman Goodman.
So to fully back up Councilwoman Rutherford here, so for those of you who don't know, I talk about housing a lot because outside of this chamber it is one of my main policy areas. And there's a lot of importance in what Councilwoman Rutherford said. I mean, there is a resolution that I've been working on that I'll give some of the facts from to kind of better paint the picture of simply our situation in Michigan and Pontiac. Nearly 6/10 of the households in Pontiac are renter occupied. Related to that similar number, whether it be renter occupied or people who do happen to own a home, are considered cost burdened by MISTA. And most people in the city of Pontiac who are renting are paying dramatically more than what rent should be. I mean, if you look at what the average cost for an available one-bedroom apartment, if you were to do the aggregate of all the available, easily accessible rental advertisements or the listings I lay out, the average would be $1,018. If you were to put in perspective along with what Michigan minimum wage is currently, which a lot of adults who work in the city, who are working at McDonald's, who are working at service industry jobs, who have no other option, are working for $10 to $12 an hour. Maybe if they get lucky, they might hit 15, but that is also not living wage in Oakland County. It's not anywhere close. And so to be able to have what would be considered affordable housing based on that income, they would need a rent that would be around $484. There is not a single place in the city of Pontiac that I know of that is not in some way subsidized housing, that is simply available, affordable housing that's in the city that meets that price point. Before I took place on this council, I was working at a school in the city making $24,000 a year by the time that I left. $24,000 a year equaled up to about $1,700 every 2 weeks. My rent alone was $700. That does not include groceries, car insurance, one of the most expensive cities in the country and one of the most expensive states to have car insurance. That does not include the price of utilities. That includes the fact that any singular thing could happen that would cause an emergency that I would not be able to afford. But when the primary bill that everyone has to pay is rent because you need a place to live, it becomes quickly and very apparent that we as a country, as a state, as a city, have a massive problem when it comes to affordable housing. And that does not simply just mean having subsidized Section 8 housing. That goes on to mention the fact that we need actual affordable housing, not just for the people who need subsidized housing, who are on government assistance, who realistically that is the most reliable money that any landlord will get coming from the federal government. But on top of that, there is the need for actual affordable housing that is like we say market rate. Market rate is simply just built around the idea of people being able to make a profit off of housing. But we need truly affordable housing because there is no reason why a person who is working a full-time job anywhere, especially not in Oakland County, one of the richest counties in the country, is having to spend more than half of their income solely on rent. If that is happening anywhere, especially in the city, as a person with that actual experience who is sitting on this dais, there should be no conversation around the fact that there is an affordable housing crisis. The conversation needs to be around what solutions and policies we're going to do to solve it. And that doesn't necessarily mean approving every single project that comes in front of us. That is not the solution. But the solution does become, we need to forcibly find a way to solve affordable housing, whether that be making sure that the affordable housing that already exists gets maintained, whether we make sure that more affordable housing happens that is actually built in a way that is affordable to the average person. And I don't just mean, as people would put it, the welfare queens who have Section 8 and food stamps and have 3 kids, but it's also including the young professionals who graduated from Pontiac High who may be for the first time deciding that they want to stay in the city of Pontiac, but they do not have the ability to afford to live here. And so with that, we have to figure out a way not only to create and provide affordable housing, whether it be apartments, whether it be duplexes, condos, whether it be single-family homes that are not being held in perpetuity by people who will never have any plans to rent them to anyone in the city, but are simply waiting for prices to go up to be able to sell it off. We need to be able to do something. And that includes development, but that also includes passing ordinances and doing actual work to crack down on the people who are making affordable housing harder in the city. And I say all of this in a very long-winded way because there are policies. There are ways to begin to curb this. And as we saw last week, there is obviously people who may not want this development in their backyard, but they do understand the need for affordable housing. And then there are people who hold the belief that part of solving that issue is building more affordable housing in places that sometimes people may feel is less than ideal, but based on these facts and a lot of information, those fears are often unfounded. So to bring it all back to the main point, these 6 facts and every other fact that exists in talking about housing when it comes to people living shows that there is something that has to be done, and we do have options. And I will, in the coming weeks, actually be passing on multiple ordinances to be reviewed by the administration as it comes to tackling this issue, because as a 23-year-old who has lived the life of a young professional in the city, literally doing everything they can to make ends meet to not get evicted, this is a crucial issue, not only to me, but childhood me, who lived in the Riverside apartments, who lived in Section 8 housing, but to also every other classmate that I had to watch sit here and worry about lights and bills being paid because it costs too much to afford to live. So I'll leave that there.
Other discussion? Councilman James.
I have a question.
Microphone.
I have a question in looking at the issue, and I do agree with my fellow council people that this is a serious issue, and it's one that we are certainly all concerned about. My question is, do we have at the city an affordable housing ordinance? Do you know if housing is a part of any of our codes or ordinances?
That can refer to a number of different topics. So we can certainly look into the full scope of our ordinances, but can you be a little more specific about what kind of ordinance you're wondering about?
Well, just, in terms of housing, do we have any do we have any ordinance that pertains to housing? Because, and I don't want to delay it, but the thought is that this is a serious problem. It's not one of those problems that you're going to solve overnight. But we are, as a legislative body, are in the position to start asking the right questions, because with a legislative body, our power is to plan and to look at what could be done. And we do that by looking at our ordinances. What do we really have on the books about fair housing in our city? What does that look like? How does it translate in our zoning codes and various things? Yeah. This is where it all starts. And then we're in a fortunate position because we need to redo our master plan's expired. It's 10 years old, and we need to redo the master plan. Yeah. And here's the opportunity for us to build into that master plan some real meat around affordable housing and how what is our plan and what is our vision for our residents to be able to have housing, not just affordable, but all levels of housing in the city. I think the key is for us to plan. We have got to sit down and work through a plan for this and then begin to work that plan. Because it's not going to be a snap your finger kind of thing to accomplish.
For sure. So I'll share 3 things that are relevant. Number one, we do need to update the city's master plan in terms of zoning ordinances. So if you're asking specifically about zoning ordinances, you're absolutely right that needs to be updated. It should have been updated years ago. We hired a new planning manager, as you know, Mark Yandrick, who came on board in November. He has now hired 2 additional members of his staff in addition to using the outside planning consultant firm of Dick Carlisle. And now that we're through the marijuana process in terms of that zoning ordinance, which, as you know, took up a lot of Manager Yandrick's time, we are about to embark on the update of the city's master plan, which will probably take at least 9 months to do. That's pretty typical for master plans, especially as we seek to solicit feedback from the community. So that's one update. Another update is that our economic development manager, Deborah Younger, was hired in large part because of her really impressive expertise in housing in the city of Detroit and elsewhere. And so she has quite a bit of expertise when it comes to housing developments. She is working to go out and seek to have a professional, expert-based housing study done of Pontiac. We haven't done a housing study in terms of the actual needs here in the community, certainly in the past couple decades, if ever. And we need to do a real housing study that is done by consultants with the kind of expertise that's needed to do a real housing study. That takes quite a bit of specialized expertise to do a housing study and to do it right. So that's very high on Manager Younger's list of priorities. The other thing, just to keep in mind, is that of all of the rental housing here in this city, about 34% of that rental housing is subject to tax abatements called pilots for the specific purpose of ensuring that it is affordable housing, which is far higher than any other community in Oakland County. The housing study will certainly explore that and compare our community to other communities and do a real assessment of the needs here. Affordability is a big part of the need here in Pontiac, as it is in all communities, but there's also a need for higher quality housing as well. I think all of us appreciate, and I think Councilman Goodman alluded to this, that we have far too many slumlords in the city as well who are not providing the high quality housing that our residents deserve. And so that also will be looked at as part of the housing study.
Councilman Rutherford for a second time.
Okay, and that's great. Can you hear me? Okay. But the issue is, the reason why we have to start not just talking about policy, but doing something, is the average apartment in District 1. We don't just talk about District 1. A one-bedroom starts off at $1,100. A two-bedroom on the newly built apartments that is on Gulf Lake Drive are $1,250 to $1,350. What is happening is our citizens are being priced out. They're being priced out because they simply can't afford it. I'll give you another example. I have a nephew. He works at GFL. He's struggling because his income has to be 3 times as much to get market rate housing. So when we're talking about market rate and affordable housing, he will never be able to afford to live here because he has to have 3 times the max of his income to even be able to get an apartment. And another thing, I hear you say is 34% that have pilots, but did you know some of the people that had pilots are no longer, like, for example, the Crossing used to be Section 8 housing. They're no longer Section 8 housing. Pinewood used to be Section 8 housing. They're no longer they're market rate. Our citizens are literally having to figure out another place to go because we literally have to do something now. And that's why I'm pushing this issue, because discussing it is great, but when we have all these different pilots and ideas what we don't want, what is happening to the people that's couch surfing? They're couch surfing because they don't have a place to go. And that's what my frustration is, because we keep saying is we need to change the policy and we need to change how we do stuff. But what about the people now? What are we doing now? That's what my discussion. What? That's it.
Councilman Goodman for a second time, followed by Councilman James for a second time.
And I mean, there are actionable things that we can do. I mean, I've mentioned it before, and I mean, there are many different scales to these things. I mean, one, for example, is like a preservation inventory. That way we know the affordable housing that exists in the city and how to be able to keep track of that, be able to maintain it, and hopefully, if the city or government or organization can't maintain it, hopefully a nonprofit with enough money and the desire for housing could potentially buy that and maintain it that way. That's an example. Being able to do something involving tenant displacement, because again, we do have slumlords in the city who, in a related ordinance, do something about tenants' rights and just cause eviction to make sure that people aren't getting evicted for whatever reason the slumlord may want to do, including improving their property to then be able to charge higher rent to a different tenant. Like being able to find ways to make sure that people aren't being displaced, because that is a massive problem. People are being displaced. I mean, there have been multiple occasions where I have gone through this community and knocked on doors, both in my capacity as a council person, but also for my job. And having spoken to residents and having heard people say, in what would be considered affordable housing, being told, I have to now leave the city because there are no more places that will take Section 8 housing. And I literally have nowhere else to go because no one will take it. Therefore, I'm staying in a hotel in Waterford. There should be no reason why a person who has housing in Pontiac, who has a housing voucher, who has essentially a way to pay for housing, is being forced to leave our city. And there are many different ways to handle that situation. There are many different ordinances. There are ways of handling it, whether it be with a carrot or a stick, to make sure that people are not being displaced out of our city, because that is an active thing that is happening. I mean, if we look back at a study from U of M not that long ago when it comes to like the city of Pontiac, I mean, let's see. According to a recent study at the University of Michigan, and this was before the pandemic, at the current filing rate, 31% of Michigan, of Pontiac renters specifically, will face the threat of eviction this year. And this was previous to the pandemic. Now, that is not saying that every person who faced eviction was evicted, because there are obviously programs to help prevent that. But why is such a large number, nearly a third of our renters, at the position of facing eviction? The fact that there are a large portion of our residents who are getting those pink letters on their door, whether or not it gets resolved, is an anxiety-producing thing that causes a lot of stress that has health effects. They have like life and family effects. So like there are policies, and I would be happy to forward every single one that I have ever researched, because I recognize that not every policy is one that is actionable for the city of Pontiac. Of course not. We are not the city of Detroit. We're not Lansing. We're not Kalamazoo. We're not Minneapolis. We're not New York. But there are definitely things that we can take from a lot of these ordinances that work in different places to make sure that we are not only getting our city to a place in which is fair and equitable, but hopefully to build upon that. Because again, there are things that must be done because there are things that are actively happening. And for us to not essentially begin taking action as if this is not an immediate thing, because housing is a primal concern. Shelter is the core need above everything. We have to take action.
Councilman James for a second time.
Yes, I agree. I think the housing study is a good idea. I would also recommend, though, for this problem, that we create an affordable housing plan it could either be a part of our master plan that we're going to work on, or it can be a standalone plan. But we need an affordable housing. Pontiac is pretty much it's not a low-income community, but we have a large number of our residents who are low income. And we do need to be concerned about their welfare if we have a significant number of people who have no place to live because there's just no affordable housing options in the city of Pontiac. So having a housing plan, and that plan would include some of the things that Councilman Goodman talked about, and it's going to need, a plan means that you got to bring in the people that we're going to have to work with developers. It can't be a one at a time. A developer comes up with a plan, he presents his plan, and maybe it passes and maybe it doesn't. We could take the proactive approach once we have a plan, an affordable housing plan, to invite developers in and say, hey, this is Pontiac's plan. This is what we would like to see happen in the city of Pontiac, and work with developers, giving options, giving tax advantages if we need to be able to move this thing forward. Because the way that we're going about it, we're really not going about it. We're acknowledging that we have a problem and really doing nothing about it. So those are my recommendations. Let's go ahead with the housing study. It's a great idea, but let's develop a housing affordable housing plan as part of our master plan or as a standalone plan. And based on that, let's be proactive working with developers to bring the projects to the city that we want in the city and that we know how they're going to work with our plan. So those are my suggestions.
Mayor Grimal?
Yeah, I think we all agree on that. That's really the whole point of doing the housing study, is to inform next steps and action. We're not doing the housing study just to say we did a housing study. The whole point of the housing study is to get the data so that we can act accordingly. But what we don't want to do is act blindly without the proper information to guide our next steps and our actions.
Councilman Rutherford?
Oh, I wanted to acknowledge that a lot of the information that I got was based upon the Habitat for Humanity of Minnesota. That was a study that they did. I also went to the New York Times, and if you look into the articles, it shows you the actual data showing the pros and cons of what can happen to a community when affordable housing is done from from an administrative level all the way to the local level. But my question is for the administration. The timeline for, and it's a question about Purdue. Is there any update about what's happening with Purdue with prospective client about making that into affordable housing at this time?
No, there's not an update as to the likelihood of Purdue being redeveloped as affordable housing.
Mayor Grimal?
I'll add to that, though, and say that we are going out with an RFP to solicit proposals for redeveloping the Purdue site. And that RFP should be going out, if it hasn't already, in the next couple of weeks. In addition, we do have a meeting scheduled with Habitat for Humanity to discuss the Purdue site.
Any further discussion on this topic? All right, with that, we are now at, before I'm going to do a point of personal privilege, I want to give the floor to Pro Tem Carrington to offer the council communication about the meeting tomorrow before we consider the resolution to go into closed session. Pro Tem.
Yes, thank you, President McGinnis. I just want to quickly talk to my district about the District 6 meeting tomorrow at 5 to 6:30 p.m. at Ruth Peterson Center. This gives the community a chance to come out and hear about the Ultra Community Development Corporation and the Mark Twain Project. For the last 12 years, Mark Twain has been definitely an eyesore in the community with excessive dumping. And I can honestly say that in the past year and a half, the company that bought this site has definitely been able to keep the site up better than anyone else previously. So please come out tomorrow to hear about the Mark Twain project as well as District 6 community update. Thank you.
And the time again?
5 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. at Ruth Peterson.
All right, very good. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution to go into closed session to discuss a letter from the city attorney regarding the election petition filed with the Michigan Employment Relations Commission as permitted by MCL 15.268 subsection C and MCL 15.268 subsection H?
So moved.
Support.
It's been...
I know I'm probably out of order, but would it be possible for us to move up the education justice?
Oh, actually, we already made that agenda item, so I was out of order for not taking that up. Good call. So we're going to set aside that motion right now. We had amended the agenda to add a final discussion item about education justice, the city partnering with Oakland Forward and the state of Michigan, Representative Carter. So I'll give the floor to Councilman Goodman. Thank you for catching that.
Well, for legal reasons, not the city. It's me as Councilperson Goodman for the time being. But yes, absolutely. As a person who spends arguably more than enough time around our legislators and in Lansing, I think it's very important for the community to know not only how to advocate for itself when it comes to having these discussions around different policy issues, but specifically as it pertains to the budget, we get money from the state. And the state has to allocate money that comes down to the school boards, to the districts. And a lot of this is based on feedback in terms of what is needed. I mean, legislators legislate based on what they hear from their constituents. It happens here in council, and it happens up the chain, hopefully. And so luckily we were able to have Representative Brenda Carter,
agreed to come to the community conversation where all of you, every single resident in the city of Pontiac and the surrounding area, can come to City Hall and be able to discuss, these different issues around education, the things that you want to see change, and have a chance to communicate these things to Rep. Carter, because we want to make sure that as she's going to Lansing, this conversation is facilitated in a way that our representative who is representing us here in Pontiac knows what is happening. And so with that, it's been very nice to have Oakland Forward be able to facilitate that conversation in their spaces as a nonprofit and helping me out to make sure that that conversation is happening, because I think that it is, again, more than important that the community is able to not only know and advocate for themselves, but be able to have a dedicated ear from the person who we voted to represent us. And so that will be happening next Monday, well, not next Monday, this coming up Monday, so April 17th at 6 p.m., and it'll be happening right here in council chambers. So it'll be in this building. So I'll say it again, it is happening Monday, April 17th at 6 p.m. here in council chambers. And again, it will be a chance for everyone to be able to have a chance to, again, advocate for themselves and be able to talk to our rep. And in addition to that, when you leave council chambers today, there is a survey, a parent survey from Oakland Forward that will be used for this conversation to be able to help us communicate these things not only to the school board, but to Rep. Carter in terms of the issues that we are concerned about when it comes to funding and legislation. And so if you can, fill those out and then also bring them back to this community conversation on the 17th, that would be amazing. Because again, as we have a person in Lansing, as we have a chance where the budget is being made, hopefully in the favor of our legislators, I believe that it is more than important for the city of Pontiac and the people who live here and who have kids who go here and pay property taxes to go into our schools to be able to have the opportunity to make sure that their concerns are being heard. So I wanted to make sure that we highlighted that.
Thank you. Councilman Parker?
I just have one question.
Microphone.
Can someone from Oakland Forward tell me what's in the bags in the seats?
Can I yield to James?
Yes. Councilman Goodman yields to Mr. McQueen. Bring the microphone to life.
Right side. There you
go. Thank you. So we put these complimentary bags that we've been putting out since the Easter season, and basically it's an invitation to both events. One will be taking place here on Monday, and then we'll have a second one which will take place in Oak Park. And you'll also find in here, it's a little bit about our mission at Oakland Forward to kind of give us explanation what we do, how we do it, and what we've accomplished pretty much. And we just got some complimentary candy in here kind of to go with the season. So that's pretty much that's all it is. I have surveys here with me if anyone wants to fill those out. Those are very beneficial to us. We're utilizing those to kind of better assess the needs of the schools in our districts and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this topic?
Nothing other than I encourage everyone in the audience, everyone both here and at home, as well as my council colleagues, to hopefully attend that meeting. It would be lovely to see some amazing faces as we talk about education in our community, because I know that most of you, again, own homes and pay taxes in the city, and would hopefully like to see the school board, our school district improve, especially two of you who have served on the school board previously. So I look forward to seeing all of you here.
Hearing no further discussion, that concludes that item on the agenda. We return to the next item, which is the closed session. And there was a motion to adopt the resolution to go into closed session to discuss a letter from the city attorney regarding the election petition filed with the Michigan Employment Relations Commission as permitted by MCL 15.268C, subsection C, and MCL 15.268, subsection H. Councilman Goodman, do you make that motion?
So moved.
And support. And Councilman Nicholson seconds that. So that's the item before us. We'll be going, if this motion carries, into closed session to discuss items as permitted by the state of Michigan. We intentionally put it at the end of the agenda so that community members had the ability to hold public comment, didn't have to wait. You are welcome to wait as the closed session continues. We will come out, vote to come out of closed session, and then resume our agenda. But you are certainly welcome to leave since many of the substantive items on the agenda have been handled. And so Is there any discussion on the motion before us? Roll call on adoption of that resolution to go into closed session. Clerk Doyle.
Carrington,
Yes.
Goodman,
Yes.
James,
Yes?
McGinnis,
Yes.
Nicholson,
Yes.
Parker,
Yes.
Rutherford. 7 yeas, no nays.
That motion carries. We go into closed session at 8:19 p.m. Thank you very much.
Today? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it actually has gotten a little better. It's gotten a little better.
Yeah, and at that hour of the night, a lot of revving and racing and noise, and it's the noise, and it's really not code enforcement.
Let's see who can get real kill somebody for our meeting. Right? Who will be at our meeting Thursday, right?
When did that happen? Oh, yeah, and that was sort of put into the office, yeah. She texted me her number.
I can get it off my other phone.
I think once I pointed out to everybody that it can't be heard on TV.
I graduated from Pontiac.
But yeah, obviously.
I tell people, I was there for 4 years, but I worked at Pontiac more than 30.
Yeah.
But you know what? I think we need to bring back.
Hey, your point is well taken, Carlton.
Our African American students from schools. Yeah. Now I went up to the school. Listen, I went up to the school the other day. I went into a 12th grade English class. How many black kids were in there? 12th grade English. And the high school passes on college prep. So they put all their money over here at this little satellite school. We had honey, Northern was negatively hard. Now honey Central was too, but it's poorly paid. Okay. Honey Northern was they tried to do it. Built by white people for white people. So you know they tried to put everything there. I bet you didn't know they had a rifle range. Still there. But I mean, it's not used as a rifle range. Sorry. 2 racquetball. Very basic. Racquetball. Yes. 3 gyms. We're talking a main gym, an auxiliary gym, and a wrestling gym.
Because I know there's personal concern, no, it's not.
Yeah,
And I
so
get that, that's why.
if we do one thing, we need to bring our African Americans in. I didn't tell you how many black kids were in that class. All his, now I'm gonna tell you something. But it's what I always say about how urban because back when I was a council, I could count on this hand how many of my Hispanic kids, and I think they got a little better as I did. Okay.
Yes,
So, I see the, okay, I see the, let me check. Okay, I can hear it. Okay, so the amp. Okay, so where's the amp again?
It should be in that rack somewhere. I'm not sure if it's Crown amp or EAIO amp or.
Okay. I'm telling you what I see at the ground. That's TOA amplifier.
Is that what it's called? Is it an amplifier?
Yeah, it's an amplifier.
Okay. Is it on the bottom of that rack or?
No, it's on the top.
Send me a picture of it.
All right.
Is it like one rack unit or?
It's one rack unit. Hold on. Let me see.
Okay, that's gotta be it.
Let me get a closer look.
Is it on?
Yep, it's on. And the low cut is on. Let's see. Now input 6.
I don't, input 7 I think is the computer. I don't know if that's the.
But input 6 is the actual speaker. But why would it go out?
Turn it off and turn it back on.
Okay. Okay, turned it off.
Yeah, the speakers pop it off?
Nope. And turned it on.
Testing, 1, 2. Yep. On the Shure processor, nope, there's no audio bouncing on the Shure processor. Right.
Okay.
Could I please have a motion to come out of closed
Moved by
session?
Carrington.
Support.
It's been moved by Carrington, seconded by Nicholson, that we come out of closed session. Hearing no discussion, roll call on that motion. Clerk Doyle.
Carrington,
Yes.
Goodman,
Yes.
James,
Yes?
McGinnis,
Yes.
Nicholson,
Yes.
Parker,
Yes.
6 yeas, no nays.
That motion carries. We come out of closed session at 8:53 p.m. We move now to communications. The communications are written for the city council, and you can access that on the agenda online or hard copies in person. Mayor Grimal, your communications?
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't have anything other than to emphasize that we really want members of the community, residents, our neighbors, our friends, our family members to turn out for all of the spring cleanups that are occurring starting on April 17th. I know we did a presentation about the location of those and the dates and times, but we really want to have a strong showing of Pontiac residents so that we can both clean up bigger swaths of our city and pick up litter, but also to really have that sense of community and that coming together, that sense of solidarity among ourselves, that we're contributing to the city and moving the city forward for the well-being of everybody here.
Thank you. We move now to closing comments. I'd like to deviate from the order to give Councilman Nicholson the first closing comment.
Thank you.
Are you skipping my closing comments?
I'm coming back to you next.
Perfect.
but he's
Sorry,
gotta get
I
to
have
time-sensitive
an
vote.
event that's time sensitive. Just wanted to remind District 2 residents that the 24th of April is our District 2 Advisory Council meeting at Goldner Walsh at 7 p.m. And our Finance Committee meeting is this Thursday in the Council Conference Room at 2 p.m. Public is welcome, Finance and Personnel.
Thank you. Have a great night, sir. Mayor Grimal, your closing comments.
Sorry, I thought maybe you misinterpreted my announcements to suggest I didn't have any closing comments, so that was my only concern. Forgive me. Just two things. Number one is we are reinstating the mayor's brunch and community conversations with the mayor, and our first session is this Saturday, April 15th, from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the Bowen Center. So we had done this last summer, and we want to reinstate this for a few of the upcoming months. So again, we look forward to seeing folks this Saturday, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., April 15th at the Bowen Center. And the only other thing I wanted to touch on is I know we had a question during public comment about the Woodward Avenue closure, and we know that this is very, very inconvenient for residents. We drive on the same streets that all other residents drive on. And so just like all of you, I've sat in traffic at 7:40 a.m. on Franklin Road. I've sat in traffic at 4:20 p.m. on Franklin Road. I know that it is really, really tough, inconvenient, and irritating. But our highest priority is safety, and that's the whole purpose of the Woodward Avenue road construction. It's a Michigan Department of Transportation, a state highway department project, but the reason why that project is so important is because that intersection of South Boulevard and Woodward has been very, very dangerous for many, many years. It became even more congested and even more dangerous with the MLK Bridge being out. But it has been dangerous for many years. This project is needed. It will prevent all left turns at that intersection in the future and require Michigan left turns. It will not put in a roundabout there. I've gotten some questions about that. This is not going to install a roundabout there, but it will require Michigan left turns, which have been proven to be much, much safer. So it is all about protecting the safety of the public. And that's all I've got, Mr. President.
All right, Clerk Doyle.
No comments, Mr. President.
Councilman Rutherford.
Good evening. I have some special news I just want to talk about. Today, 1.2 million convictions have been set aside for the new expungement law software. So far, 1,077,788 people have misdemeanors cleared, and 105,000 178 felonies have been cleared so far. Why is that important? It's being quoted from the D-Trade News today. It's important because we have a lot of people that stay in the city of Pontiac that have old convictions, old felonies, and you guys need to check out to see if your felonies have been removed or your misdemeanors have been removed. And this is coming from the D-Trade News by a statement by the Michigan State Police. The other thing I want to talk about tonight is affordable housing is and will always be a part of our conversation. And I hope that after today, we have learned some new facts about it and how we can tackle those mistruths or those untruths that are told. I'm an advocate for affordable housing because I come from affordable housing, and all of the benefits that I got, all of the benefits that I've had has came from having a stable housing, affordable income, to be able to stay in the housing, and also having a dream of home ownership. Last but certainly not least, I want to make sure everybody knows that the District 1 meeting will be the last Saturday of the month. I originally wanted it to be in conjunction with the cleanup, but I can't do that due to another event that's going to be held from Crestwood and Ashwood Estates, excuse me. So District 1 meeting will be at 3 p.m. last Saturday of the month, April the 29th, I believe, and that's from 3 to 5, and those are my closing comments.
Thank you. Councilman Goodman, District 3.
I just want to reiterate the easy ones, which is please come to the community conversation with Representative Brenda Carter, facilitated by myself and Oakland Ford on Monday, to make sure that you have a chance to participate in the legislative process as you are entitled to as a constituent. And I wanted to truly thank her and her office for participating in this as well. In addition to that, the District 3 community meeting will be happening on April 21st, which is a Friday, and it will be happening at the Wisner Mansion, or the Oakland County Pioneer Society. And then I'll be happening at 5 p.m. So again, District 3 community meeting will be happening 5 p.m. on the 21st at the Old Governor's Mansion, or the Pioneer Society. And just really to further belabor a point, even though we've mentioned it a few times, is the massive importance in terms of addressing our community's public affordable housing needs. And again, that obviously extends not just from making sure that the building in which people are inhabiting is affordable, but also making sure that it is high quality and life sustaining. It is not simply enough to have housing. It truly does mean something else to have high quality, safe, affordable housing that is accessible and equitable to the community that it is meant to serve. And in that, that does not just mean building new, nice, shiny things, but it also means preserving what we have and making sure that the people who inhabit these places, inhabit these homes, these apartments, these condominiums, whatever place that they call home, make sure that they're able to live there also in dignity. Because again, it does not mean enough to be able to have an affordable apartment. I live in an affordable apartment, and I have on multiple occasions had to call code enforcement and have them come and inspect my building, which had many, many violations, including one of which led to a neighbor of mine who, because I talk to my neighbors as a council person who cares a lot about housing, watching their roof fall in through the years and years over a leak that kept happening that was being repatched by drywall. Right, those examples lead us to figure out that, again, not only do we need to build things, we need to preserve the things that are actually working and maintain and increase the quality that is available to the people here, because it is not simply enough to have affordable housing. But on top of that, making sure that we are doing everything that we can to address the intersections of housing, the many different ways in which our policies and our behaviors affect someone's ability to be able to live a dignified and just life in a place they should be able to call home.
Councilwoman Kathleen James, District 4.
Yes, District 4 will hold its community council meeting on Thursday, April the 27th at 6 p.m. at the new Mount Moriah International Church. And also, in closing, I'd like to extend my condolences to the family of my good friend Avery Burton. Avery was an avid golfer in the city of Pontiac, and I am sincerely saddened at his loss. So with that, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman William Parker Jr., District 5.
Thank you, Brother President. First, I want to thank, as always, I want to thank the person who prayed for us, Sister Desro, who always comes and she prays for us. I want to thank her. I want to remind District 5 of their meeting April 13th at 6 p.m. in the City Hall Lions Den. I just want to share a little bit in regards to the South Boulevard project. You know, starting with when we were installed, we have heard numerous comments about the danger of the South Boulevard corner. But it seems interesting that some of the same people who complain about nothing happening is now complaining about something happening. And I just think sometimes you need to, if you're going to fix something, you have to be willing to put up with a little inconvenience. You can't have it both ways. You can't complain that nothing is going on and then complain about something happening. So if we're going to move the city forward, especially the way everybody says they want the city to move forward, there's going to have to be someone who's going to accept the inconvenience of moving it forward. You can't keep street opens if you're trying to fix them. You can't keep corners open if you're trying to repair them. And so you can't have it both ways. And I just want to say that. On the issue of affordable housing, I think everybody here has a little bit of skin in the game in affordable housing. But the other piece that we seem to lack is I've talked with some of the people, landlords, and I know some of their part, we need to understand how business works. If the previous tenant tears up my property, then I'm gonna pass on that expense to the next person renting it. And so we got to make sure that we're telling people, if you're renting, take care of the property, because the landlord is not going to assume the cost of repairing that. He's going to pass that on to the public at large. He may raise it up $200, $300, $400. He's going to do that. Now, is that fair? Probably not, but that's just what happens. If you're going to rent, you need to understand that it's not your property, and you need to take better care of it, because somebody else who's going to be in the same position that you was in is going to have to pay for it. And then I want to thank the mayor for their continued observation and fixing of the speed bump issue. And I think that's a good thing, and I pray we can get to that as quickly as possible. And those are my comments. Again, I want to thank each and every one of I want to thank DPW. I want to thank the code enforcement people for their due diligence and all that they continue to do to try to move our city forward. I want to thank this great body for trying to move our city forward in the midst of all the opposition sometimes that we get. There is not a person at this dais who is not concerned with making sure that Pontiac moves and is considered as one of the best places to reside in Oakland County. And with that, I'll say have a great evening.
Thank you. Council President Pro Tem William Carrington, District 6.
Thank you, President McGinnis. Just a couple of quick announcements. Again, I just wanted to make sure everyone knows about the District 6 community meeting tomorrow, April the 12th at Ruth Peterson Senior Citizen Center at 5 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. Please come out and hear about the Mark Twain Project. You will definitely be impressed, because I am. Also, Pontiac citywide cleanup start April the 17th to 22nd, and we have several 6 district parks on the cleanup list. Tuesday, April the 18th, Oliver Playfield and Marge Burt Park. Wednesday, April the 19th, Baldwin Park. Thursday, April the 20th, Aaron Perry Park. Saturday, April the 22nd, Charlie Harrison Park. And I'll be there with many of our youth on Saturday, April the 22nd at Charlie Harrison Park from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. So please come out and volunteer at one of the parks. And good night.
Thank you very much. Thank you to everyone that's on the City Council. You put in a lot of time, and you contend with a lot of feedback from residents, and it's hard. We have about 9,000 people that live in each City Council district, and there are many, many issues because our city has unique and important and urgent challenges. And so I experience it, so I know you experience it. That's a lot to contend with. So I just want to thank you for the sacrifice of tranquility, the sacrifice of time, and the sacrifice of your families making as well, that instead of spending time solely focused on your own property or your own family or your own circle of friends, your circle is expanded to the whole city and beyond, and then, of course, with special emphasis on your respective council districts. I want to thank the residents of District 7 that came out to our monthly meeting yesterday. Great turnout, great conversation. Thank you, Mayor for being there as well to be able to field the many questions from the residents of Pontiac's east side. And keep the feedback coming. Let us know when new potholes emerge. Let us know when new dumping sites have emerged. And let us know when things don't seem right in terms of a business or a property owner or a landlord, so that way we can look into it. I got to tell you, I'm not going to belabor it, but I am shocked. I'm pleasantly shocked that the privately owned property at Auburn and Sanford that was out of compliance and not following the code and the zone, that it was actually enforced, that they literally had to rip out new chain link fence, that they went, carte blanche and just did it themselves without pulling a permit and not with the right setback, and then a non-approved business use. That is mind-blowing in a positive way, because we've all, as residents of Pontiac, have experienced where, oh, something happened that wasn't supposed to, I guess it's just going to stay there. So it feels like a small example of a larger shift that's happening in our corridors and our neighborhoods. I know we've all seen different shifts, large and small, but my jaw dropped when I saw that was no longer in place there, and that the resident who's been living there for decades across the street, a retiree, a committed member of the community, that his persistent follow-up and asking those questions yielded results. It's really impressive for local government, a victory for the residents. So I'll leave it at that, and I do apologize that I filibustered earlier. I hope I didn't speak too long. That was fun. That was fun for being called out for that. As the presider, I sometimes try and hold some of my opinions to myself so that way other council members can be heard. With that, I'll have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
It's been moved by Councilman Parker, seconded by Councilman Rutherford, right?
Yes.
Hearing no discussion, roll call on adjournment. Clerk Doyle.
Goodman,
Yes.
James,
Yes?
McGinnis? Yes.
Nicholson, Parker,
Yes.
Rutherford,
Yes.
Carrington.
Yes.
6 yeas, no nays.
That motion carries. We stand adjourned at 9:10 p.m.